IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We told y'all something this week. So I don't know when it's going to be, but we're going to get a buy sell hold in at some point in time this week. And the guys couldn't do the we in, we out tonight. So Sean Stiers is currently calling the Notre Dame Texas women's basketball game. And Vince needed a night off. So I said, you know what, man? We'll do that. So I actually grabbed all the buy sell hold questions, and I grabbed the we in, we out questions, turned those into buy sell hold questions, since basically it's another name for buy sell hold. And we're going to do a buy sell hold tonight. So we thought, we could have said, no buy sell hold this week, but people had already put submissions in, and they're kind of fun. So we're like, we're going to do one. So I said, hey, Trev, man, you down to do a buy sell hold tonight? He was down. So we're ready to get rocking and rolling. So we're gonna have some fun tonight with buy sell hold questions, and a lot of good ones, Trev, and a lot of them about the college football playoffs. So we're gonna have a lot of fun, and never know, maybe I'll have another debate about the college football playoff. Had one last night, had one today with my guy Bill Bender, which is a ton of fun, by the way. Like, I hope you guys know that was passionate, not heated. I love Bill, and it was a fun debate, and I like Bill because Bill will push back, and I like that. You know what I mean? And he thought through these things, so that was a ton of fun. Never know, maybe me and Trev will have one tonight. Have a feeling, since he and I are usually on the same page about so many things, that there may not be too many spirited debates tonight. But it was a ton of fun, and I am ready to rock and roll with tonight's buy sell hold. But I know, Trev, we're going to kick things off with a word from a friend of the show.
You know it. You know we have to. Our friends over at MyBookie, right? You guys know what the drill is. I'm going to kind of flip things on its head a little bit and kind of plug their risk-free Thursdays first, because you guys know about MyBookie by now. You know what's going on over there. There's about 35 minutes until the Thursday night football game kicks off. It's the Packers taking on the Detroit Lions in Detroit, and there's no better time to use your risk-free bet than with the Thursday night football game. So if you're unfamiliar, you're not sure what that means if you put down a bet, say on the Packers and the Lions game, and it doesn't hit for whatever reason, you get your money back. But if it does hit, you cash out in a big way. Now, if you're new to MyBookie, what you're going to go and do is you're going to sign up. And when you do sign up and you put in your first deposit, make sure you use promo code IRISH. What that's going to do for you is it's going to double your deposit bonus. So, for example, if you put in $10, you're going to get $10 in bonus bets, which is awesome. Now, if you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, Trev, I don't really sports bet, man, that's okay. What MyBookie has for you is they have their live casinos. So if you'd rather post up at a blackjack table, I highly recommend doing that with the MyBookie live casino. You're able to find that on the website. Now, another thing that you can do, enroll in their specialty or in their loyalty rewards program. What that's going to do for you is you're going to earn extra cash just for placing down some bets. So MyBookie has a lot going on over there. Be sure to check out our friends. Remember, MyBookie, it's a sports book that gives you the tools to win and rewards you for every moment of play.
So, Mr. Trowbridge, are you ready to have some fun tonight with this little buy sell hold segment that we're going to do today? I am very much looking forward to it. It's been a wild day, man. I mean, just recruiting yesterday. Everybody's flipping out because North Carolina interviewed Bill Belichick for their head coaching job, which I just think is wild. I just do not see Bill Belichick as a college head football coach, man. That's just wild. But we'll see, man. We'll see. But it's going to be a fun weekend, right? A lot of football going on, and so I know a lot of our questions are about this weekend and about the playoff, and so Eric Bieniemy got quote unquote fired today. His agent said, no, this is always the plan. UCLA's like, no, he got fired. So it's been a wild couple days, man. But I'm ready to rock and roll, Trev. And so usually when we do buy sell hold, we start off and we just kind of go in order, right? We'll start off the first one and then we'll just kind of go in order. And there was a question that I moved to the front because it was something that was relevant to a comment, something that Rich Eisen was talking to Marcus Freeman about today. And I'm going to kind of use this buy sell hold to kind of address that. So I want to just kind of set the stage a little bit for that. But let's go ahead and get started off with Domer Grizz.
Let's do it, man. Buy, sell, hold from Domer Grizz. Having our bye this week rather than having to play a conference championship this weekend is even more important this year with our depth and injury issues. Better to have these 3 weeks to get rested than to have to play a top 15 team where fatigue might lead to an L that leads to a worse seeding and 5 postseason games.
I mean, sure, that's true, but that's true for kind of everybody. And the reality is Notre Dame is going to get 3 weeks off no matter what. And if anything, I'm going to pull up the college football playoff schedule. So if Notre Dame were to play on their last game was on November 30th, right? And so if they had their next game was going to be most likely on December 20th, if not December 21st. So that's basically 3 weeks. If they played tomorrow or Saturday on December 6th or 7th, the next game they would play wouldn't be until December 31st. So actually they would have a little bit more time off of several days if they played this weekend and then got a bye into the quarterfinals. So just from the standpoint of, if we're looking at it just from the standpoint of rest, I'm going to kind of sell this and just kind of say, hey, if they were playing a team this weekend, they'd already be in, as the committee has said, they'd already be in. And if you win, you get 25 days rest as opposed to 21 days rest. So that's how I take it from your standpoint. So Trevor, I'll let you address this one, and then I'm going to bring up a bigger picture aspect of this whole buy versus no buy thing like that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I mean, you're going to get a 3-week buy regardless whether you win in your conference championship or not, right? But I think for Notre Dame specifically, I do like the fact that they have a bye this week. Just seeing how fatigued the defense was. There's some players that are, they're hurt but have the potential to come back. You have guys like Howard Cross who, they just didn't feel like was ready to go. And I don't know if forcing the issue in, say, a potential conference championship game would have helped out at all. So, yeah, Brian, I agree with what you said. Like, overall, you're going to get 25 days of rest if you win your conference championship. However, for Notre Dame specifically, I would buy this.
I just kind of look at it like this, Trev, is everybody's kind of at that point right now.
Sure.
I mean, everybody's at that point right now. What I want to address, too, because I like how Domer Grizz said having our bye this week, because Marcus Freeman tried to make this point to Rich Eisen, and Rich Eisen's either not, I don't know, say it wasn't registering in his head what Marcus Freeman was trying to say, or he was purposely ignoring it in order to make the point he wanted to make. I don't, Rich Eisen's okay. He does a decent job, I guess. I actually rather enjoy his interviews when he brings on like some actor, because I feel like he's actually in his, element where he actually has some level of just knowledge of interviewing and things like that, whatever. But whatever, he's a Michigan guy. What can you do? But the point Marcus Freeman was making is like, this is our buy. I mean, but what he said to Rich Eisen, like, this is our buy. And Rich Eisen, is like, but wouldn't it be nice to have the buy? And it's like, did you not like at all listen to what he just said? In this notion of people, it's nothing more than a ploy to try to get people to try to coerce Notre Dame into joining a conference. And if the current setup doesn't perfectly show why Notre Dame shouldn't be in a conference, I don't know what will. And this is exactly what we're talking about. So if Notre Dame had to play a game this weekend, okay, so they'd play a game this weekend on neutral field. Let's say they win, then they get a bye, which is not really a bye. It's called a bye, but they would have had to play a game this weekend. So the point is this: every team in college football, in order to win a championship, has to play at least 16 games. Some teams may have to, if you play in a championship and you lose, you have to play 17. So if you're Notre Dame, you get to play your 12-game regular season. And then in order to win a championship, if you're a championship contending team, you're going to be a 5-8 seed. So your options are this, Trev: not be in a conference and not get this coveted bye, which is nothing more than a reward for the season, doesn't really impact the number of games you have to play. And then say, okay, you're going to get a home game and then 3 neutral site games. Your first round game, if you're good, is going to be against a lower seeded team. If you get a bye, barring an upset, you're going to get a higher seeded team. So Notre Dame can choose. Let's think about this. We join a conference so we can play number 8 SMU. Because it'd be the ACC. So Notre Dame would be in over Clemson. Join that league, play number 8 SMU, get a bye. Let's say Notre Dame wins. They're the number 2 seed. Then you got to play the number 7 seeded team, which in this instance would be a team that's ranked 5th, 4th, 5th, or 6th. You get a Georgia, something like that. That makes more sense to you than not playing in a conference championship game, getting a home playoff game against, in this instance, most likely an Arizona State, an Iowa State, or a Clemson is what I think is going to happen. Then having to play the 4th best conference champion, which almost every season is not going to be a top 5 team, on a neutral field. How in the world does playing a conference championship game on a neutral field, getting a bye, and then most likely either playing a higher seeded team or a team that upset a higher seeded team on a neutral field, so then 4 neutral field games after your regular season's over with to win a championship, but you only have to play 3 quote-unquote playoff games? Personally, the 2 leagues that Notre Dame would join would be the Big Ten or the ACC. So your options are essentially, you're either going to play number 8 SMU, number 3 Penn State, or number 1 Clemson or number 1 Oregon in order to get earn the right to a bye. If you win, you get a quote-unquote bye, and you're never playing at home again. You have 3 games, and then you're the 1 or the 2 seed. You're playing the 7 or the 8, which, as we see from this year, is a pretty good football team, an Ohio State, a Georgia, a Tennessee. And then you've got, neutral field, neutral field, neutral field. The worst case scenario being in a conference is you play in the conference championship game and lose, and now you still have to play 4 games. Or, screw you, conferences. We're going to keep doing what we're doing because we're the only team that can do it and be on this stage. Get a home game after 3 weeks rest against a lower seeded team, and then play the 3rd or 4th best conference champion in the quarterfinals. No one can convince me that being in a conference in any sort of way is better for Notre Dame in the current format. No one can convince me of that. And if anyone would actually think for 2 seconds beyond Notre Dame has to join a conference, they would be like, why the hell would Notre Dame want to join a conference? They'd be idiots to join a conference. And so this notion of this line of argument that Rich Eisen was making was like, dude, this is why you don't go to a public school like Michigan and get an education. I'm totally kidding. Michigan's a great school. I'm just being silly. But it just was such a, like, dude, do you even think about this for 2 seconds, or did someone just hand you these questions? Or are you just all agenda driven? There's no rational argument for being in a conference being better for Notre Dame. Because if Notre Dame's not good enough to get a home playoff game, then they're probably not a championship caliber football team. And then I don't really care. So I just want to speak to this. It's always better for Notre Dame to not be playing this weekend. Always better. And that's my 2 cents.
I like it. You answered my question at the end. I was going to ask, what if you were in a Clemson situation where you're the number 17 team, but you have the opportunity to win your conference?
You don't deserve to be in the playoff at that point in time if you're Notre Dame.
Sure.
And you're going to get whooped anyway. Because like, let's say Notre Dame was Clemson. Super easy schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Cakewalk schedule. 9-3 season. And then you can somehow backdoor your way in. And your reward would be what? Playing Georgia at Georgia.
Sure.
And were you going to get slaughtered? I'd rather just say, go to a bowl game, win your bowl game, be 10-3, and then go. Now, there may be seasons where like Notre Dame starts off poorly and has a great run, like USC 2016, but those are so rare. And as we've seen in this instance, like I'm thinking forward to the year they play like Texas and that, They have those well, as the committee has shown this year, in those years, Notre Dame at 10-2, 9-3 is still going to get in a travel situation, most likely, or in Tech Georgia's case, they still may get in. So those rare occasions where you may need that to get in, sure, that would be nice, but there's going to be way more seasons where it's better. But I'm also a believer that I don't want Notre Dame to play for a championship if they're not deserving of being a championship football team. And the reality is Clemson does not deserve to be there, in my opinion. You say, well, they earned the right. No, they didn't. They didn't have to play Miami. They didn't have to play Georgia Tech this year. They didn't have to play SMU this year. They literally got to duck the 3 best teams in their conference in the regular season. So Clemson is without a doubt a paper tiger, in my opinion. And when you look at the ACC standings and you think about who Clemson played, they played one of the good teams in their league, and that team smoked them on their own field. So number one team in the league was SMU, didn't play them. The next best team in the league was Miami, they didn't play them. The next best team in the league was Syracuse, they didn't play them. The next best team in the league was Louisville, they got smoked at home by Louisville. The next best team in the league was Georgia Tech, they didn't have to play Georgia Tech. And the next best team in the league was Duke, they didn't have to play Duke. The next best team in the league was Virginia Tech. They played them and beat them by 10 on the road. So they played, of the top 8 teams in the league, they played 2 of them. Beat one, got smoked by the other. If you look at the top, that'd be the top 7 teams in the league other than Clemson. If you look at the top 6 teams in that league, so all the teams that had a winning record in conference, there were, 4, 5, there were 6 other teams along with Clemson that had a winning in record conference. Clemson played one of those teams and got smashed. So if that's who you are, you don't belong in the playoff. I've said this a bunch of times. If you get destroyed in the regular season, you probably don't belong in the college football playoff. That's one of my beefs with Alabama. That's one of my beefs with Clemson. Now, I know that they get the tiebreakers here and there. Well, actually, there weren't any tiebreakers because freaking Miami lost. But part of the reason Miami had 2 L's is because Miami had to play a tougher conference schedule.
Sure.
They just did. They had to play the number they didn't have to play number 1 or number 2, right, which helped them. But they had to play Syracuse, they had to play Louisville, they had to play Georgia Tech, they had to play Duke. So if you look at the 6 teams other than Miami that were in there, they had to play 4 of them. Clemson had to play 1 of them. So they backed in. And if Notre Dame backed in similar fashion where they were just got smoked by a team like Georgia, got smoked at home by a team like Louisville, got whooped, blew a game late again at home against a team like South Carolina, I don't want you to be in the playoff. Go win a bowl game against some 8-4 team, get your 10th win, and then regroup for next year. That's what I would want to happen. So that's I'm willing to sacrifice that once of 10 or 15 years where Notre Dame could maybe backdoor their way into the league to have it the way that it is now.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I was just curious around, and again, it is kind of like that one-off
right
situation, but that was the only scenario that I could think of where maybe they could. But outside of that, I mean, again, we saw it this year. Just take care of business and you'll be in. You know what I mean?
We did have a super chat reminder. These submissions are for premium members only in the message board. If you want to get something in, you can put a super chat in. And I think Connor Grant's also a message board, premium board member. But Connor Grant put a super chat in. Trevor, thank you for that, Trev. Or for Connor, thank you for much. He says, Trev, and I'm going to ask this of you. Jeremiah Love is the best offensive weapon in the college football playoff from any team.
As much as I would love to buy this, because I love Jeremiah Love. I do love Jeremiah Love, and he's electric, and he can do things. I'll give this to you. I will buy the fact that he can do things that nobody else can do in the country. But when you have guys in this playoff like Ashton Genty and what he's able to do on the field, it's hard for me to buy this. I really wish that I could, but I'm probably going to have to sell it for some of the other people that are in there. I think of what Notre Dame would need specific for a team I mean, Dylan Gabriel's going to be as good of a weapon in the college football playoff. I mean, he just led his team undefeated. Like, there's not a whole lot of, so
let me put this caveat in there that he doesn't have. Stick to non-quarterbacks, because quarterbacks are. I'm curious if you stuck to non-quarterbacks, who other than, because like, just so we're clear, Trev, I'm selling this because I love Jeremiah Love. Ashton Genty's still the best player in college football, in my opinion, this year.
Yeah.
Take quarterbacks out. Who else would you have over Jeremiah Love of the teams in the playoff? So let's assume Arizona State wins over Iowa State. Let's assume, well, first of all, I have to assume that Boise State gets in. If Boise State loses to UNLV this weekend, my answer is bye. Because I just went through this, Trevor, and I'm trying to think of, like, for me, I honestly still would take Jeremiah Love over Dylan Gabriel, but let's take quarterbacks out of the equation, because I don't know that when I guess quarterbacks are weapons, but when I think weapon, I kind of think a receiver of the football through handoff or pass. So we're arguing this, debating the same thing. Let's go with that. So you have Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee. Let's say SMU wins, Indiana. Let's say Boise State wins. Let's say Boise State loses, because we've already said Ashton Genty would be number one. Alabama, and let's say then Clemson would, or UNLV would be in. Okay, let's go with that. Who then would you say? So this question gets asked, and you and I know that Ashton Genty was knocked out by Boise losing to UNLV. Who else would you look at?
I mean, if Ashton Genty's out, I would look at probably some wide receivers, honestly. Like, I would think of, a Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. I would think of a Ryan Williams at Alabama. I would think of probably between the two, either Tez Johnson or Evan Stewart, probably Tez Johnson. Like, not saying that I would take any of them over Jeremiah Love, just those are the players top of mind for me. So
then the question is, okay, so great, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, when he wants to be good, is very good. You could look at the either one of the Ohio State running backs, Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith are also both good options there. Again, taking quarterbacks out of the conversation, you'd have Dylan Simpson at Tennessee. Just kind of going through the list. Tyler Warren for Penn State. Yeah. Texas, you would take. I mean, it's wild as Texas doesn't have really like one great skill player this year. I mean, Quintravion Wisner is kind of their best back. Gunnar Helm, their tight end's their best pass catcher. Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond. None of those guys have had big time numbers.
Sure.
Indiana has some good weapons, but I think, again, you'd have Kevin Jennings has some decent weapons at SMU. But do any of them kind of stand out as like that individually great player? Brashard Smith is probably the closest thing I would have to probably being that for them. Would you agree with that? He's probably their best offensive weapon, the running back at SMU.
Yeah.
Just trying to go through this. Alabama, you said Ryan Williams, Clemson, Phil Maffa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's some good players in the conversation, is my point, Trev. But if Cam Scattaboo, if Arizona State wins, that's a good one. If you were to say Boise State's out, I would still buy that he's the best weapon in college football right now. And you could argue that a guy like Ryan Williams isn't, and he's good. 857 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith, 57 receptions, 934 yards, 10 touchdowns. When you look at yards, you look at touchdowns, you look at different ways to impact the game. I think Jeremiah Love is the best weapon in college football, in the college football playoff, if Boise gets knocked off this weekend. I'd take him over those guys, because those guys are going to help you in one phase of the game, passing game. The thing about Jeremiah Love is he can help you in the run game and the passing game. And he's dependent on one less person to be effective. All skill players are dependent upon the offensive line, but the quarterbacks are also dependent on the receivers are also dependent on the quarterbacks.
Sure.
Somebody said Taj Brooks. This is a question about the playoff teams. Taj Brooks is the running back at Texas Tech. They're not in the playoff. So this is more about playoff teams, because then you can get into the Travis Hunter conversation. I mean, there's a whole lot of different things.
Right.
This is just playoff teams. So if you take out, if we were to say, okay, Boise gets knocked off because we both agree Genty's the best player in that instance, I would. It's not an easy decision. It's not as easy as just being Notre Dame homer. Yeah, of course, Love. But there's some really good young players. And here's what I love about this over the next couple of years of college football. Most of the guys you just mentioned are young.
Yeah.
Ryan Williams is a freshman. Actually, Ryan Williams should have just signed with somebody yesterday. He reclassified and moved up a year. Jeremiah Smith is exceptionally talented. So, I mean, there's some really good young players in college football this year that are young guys.
Yeah.
Dylan Sampson's a heck of a player. I just feel like if Jeremiah Love had the kind of touches that Dylan Sampson had, he'd be putting up some monster numbers right now.
Oh, yeah.
He'd still be at 6.5 yards a carry. Now he wouldn't be over 7 like he is now. I mean, look, the more times you touch the ball, the you're going to go up there. So I would buy this if we knew that UNLV was going to upset Boise this weekend. I'd buy this. But as long as Boise State's in the college football playoff, Ashton Genty's that dude.
Yeah.
He's that dude.
Yep.
He really is.
Yeah. And that's where I'm at. And again, like, and I'm glad you touched on it. Like, it's not like if I'm not buying this, I think Jeremiah Love is the 7th. Like, he would be my 2nd. It's just Ashton Genty, what he did this year, man, is incredible.
Yeah. Even when everybody in the stadium knew what was coming.
Right. I mean, that's yeah, man.
You know, I was thinking about this the other day. We have these conversations about, how would so-and-so do behind this? And I actually had this thought the other day. What would Ashton Genty have done if he could have run behind the 2017 Notre Dame offensive line? Think about that.
Probably gave Barry Sanders. I mean, he gave Barry Sanders' record a run for its money this year behind Boise State's offense.
Probably going to beat the record this year because he's got tonight and he's got a bye week. There's a good chance he breaks it. I just want to tell people, stop talking about Barry's record because I think it's still stupid that college football has not been smart enough to say we're going to go retroactively add bowl games to people's career numbers and season numbers.
Sure.
What's crazy about Barry Sanders and his 2,600 plus yards, I think it's 2628 or something like that. Trev, do you know exactly what the number is? He ran for over 220 yards in a bowl game against Wyoming. That means Barry Sanders had over 2,800 rushing yards. And when you look at Barry Sanders' total yards that year, people don't understand. People forget, younger people that didn't necessarily, and I was 10 when it happened. So, but he had 19 catches for 106 yards, no touchdowns. But Barry Sanders had over 400 yards of kick returns. He had a punt return for a touchdown that year. He had a kick return for a touchdown that year. He had 37 rush. He had 39 touchdowns in 11 games. And then I think he ran for 3 touchdowns in the bowl game. That's insane. Like, Ashton Genty is 300 yards away from Barry Sanders, and he's already played one more game.
That's so crazy.
And he did it in the Big 8 against Nebraska and Oklahoma and teams like that. It was unreal how good he was. Just unreal good. He was a freak of a player. And the other thing that people are forgetting too, I keep hearing people saying like, Ashton Genty is having the best season that the running back has had since Barry Sanders. And I'm like, no, he's not. With all due respect, he hasn't even passed Melvin Gordon yet for single season rushing record. So like, let's not forget that Melvin Gordon in the Big Ten not too long ago had an absolutely monster season as well. 2,587 yards, 29 touchdowns. Ashton's got to pass him first. And there's been a couple Big Ten backs that have had some monster years in 12 or 13 games as well in the Big Ten. You think of Derrick Henry's season that he had the year he won the Heisman Trophy. He had a monster season as well, playing at Alabama, 2,200 rushing yards, 28 touchdowns, and he sat out a lot of second halves that year. But I want to remind people, let's not forget that Barry Sanders' single season record for yards, total yards, was broken recently by Christian McCaffrey. In 2015, Christian McCaffrey rushed for over 2,000 yards, had over 600 yards receiving, and had over 1,000 yards in kick returns and over 100 yards in punt returns that season. So he had way over 3. So he actually broke Barry Sanders' record of total yards, including kick, special teams and all that, got broken 2015 by Christian McCaffrey. So, yeah.
That's nuts.
Yep. But Ashton Genty's been phenomenal. I just want to say, hey, guys, let's just enjoy Ashton Genty for what he's doing and not try to compare him to Barry Sanders and ignore all these other great seasons that backs have had recently.
Right.
You know what I mean? Melvin Gordon, J.K. Dobbins had a phenomenal year a couple years ago for Ohio State, over 2,000 yards. Jonathan Taylor for Wisconsin. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there's been some monster seasons recently, no doubt. We got another super chat here as well.
Super chat from Sean Michael. Thank you, Sean. Buy, sell, hold. Marcus Freeman brings Notre Dame a national championship by 2027.
Buy. I mean, I've said since the summer, I think Notre Dame wins a title in the next 3 years. So, I mean, there's no reason for me to back away from that now. You know, I mean, when you think about what they've done this year with all the injuries, they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be the 5, 6, or 7 seed. Because like we're all kind of assuming they're going to get the 5. There's still an outside chance that they get the 7. If Penn State beats Oregon and Georgia beats Texas, or if Penn State plays a barn burner with Oregon and they just decide not to move Penn State down, and Georgia beats Texas in a super close game, there's still a chance that one of those Big Ten teams and Texas stay ahead of Notre Dame. Now, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying there's a chance that could still happen. I think most likely they're 5 or 6. And that's with you lost your starting left tackle, you lost your starting center, you lost your starting Viper, you lost your backup Viper who replaced him, who was playing even better than him by game 5. You lost your best cornerback, All-American cornerback, a week later or a game later. So by the middle of the season, by game 6, Notre Dame had lost their starting left tackle going into the season, starting left tackle, their starting center, their All-American corner, their starting Viper, their number 2 Viper, and then your number 3 corner quit. By the middle of the season, you had lost all that. And they have not lost since, and they've only played one game. They've played 0 games that were decided by less than 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to make me think that Marcus Freeman's got a good chance of doing what we thought he was going to do at some point in time also, which is bring them a championship. It's not going to be easy. It's not a lock. I'm not betting my mortgage on it, but I just feel like within the next 3 years, Notre Dame is going to have that type of season. Is it this year? Is it 2 years from now when CJ Carr's got a year under his belt or Kenny Minchie's got a year under his belt? We'll find out. But I think things are trending in a great direction when you think about how young this team is. And that's what I think a lot of people outside Notre Dame don't realize is how young Notre Dame is. So there's a lot of dudes coming back these next couple years as well. Like Jeremiah Love couldn't go pro if he wanted to after the season. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm buying that, Trev. What say you?
Yeah, I'm buying it. I mean, look, it's not beyond, the reason of belief that it could happen this year. I'm not calling my shot. I'm not saying Notre Dame is going to win, but if they're putting themselves in a position to compete for a national championship this year, which like you can make, they're making the playoffs, so they are in contention to compete for a national championship, right? It's hard for me to imagine with the guys they have coming in, and especially the guys that they have coming back, that those odds are going to decrease over the next couple of years. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with that.
The only reason this would end up being a no would be if he's not here anymore. And I'll address that in a later buy, sell, hold, because that's brought up as well.
Okay.
All right, let's get back on track. Good stuff so far, guys. Really good stuff.
Buy, sell, hold from Dorn 10. My Uncle Roger will eat his words. He said Notre Dame is soft. And the Irish will make the semifinals, giving me the right to post his number to the message board and let my internet friends devour him.
Well, I would want to get permission from your Uncle Roger that he's okay with that before you dox him on our board and get me in legal trouble. But as long as if that's like a bet and he agreed to it and I know that, then sure. Look, here's the deal, man. You can say that Notre Dame's not going to make the semifinals. You could say, hey, I think they're going to get beaten round 1 by Bama. I think they may get beaten round 2 by whoever. I don't think they're going to make it to That's fine. That's fair. I think there's a lot of how do I put this? There's the parity that exists means that Georgia could go on a run or they could get beat in the first round. Ohio State could go on a run, or they could get beat in the first round. Alabama could go on a run, or they could get knocked out completely. You know what I mean? Like Oregon could go into the playoff 13-0, and would you be completely shocked if Ohio State's the 8 seed and they get a rematch in round 2 against Oregon on a neutral field and they beat Ohio State? I mean, they beat Oregon. I wouldn't be shocked by that. Because there's just no 2019 LSU, 2018 Clemson. There's no 2020 Alabama. There's no 21 or 22 Georgia this season. And I don't even know that there's a 2023 Michigan or Washington, to be completely honest with you, this season. Because part of it is there's just no quarterbacks on the level of the Michael Penixes and the Joe Burrows and guys like that. And I mean, if Georgia had Stetson Bennett instead of Carson Beck, they'd be a much different team, in my opinion. I just don't think Carson Beck's very good. So I just look at all those things, Trev, and anyone can get knocked out, right? So with that being said, your Uncle Rogers being a bit of a knucklehead to sit there and there's a lot of things you could say about Notre Dame. Hey, I don't know if their pass defense is going to hold up against truly elite pass offenses, and we saw that against USC. I don't buy that because we've seen them play other really good pass offenses. Or I don't know if Notre Dame's big enough on defense in the front 7 to hold up against a really powerful run game like Tennessee's, or I don't know if they could hold up against Ohio State's receivers, or I don't know if they could hold up against Georgia's front 7. I mean, those are all valid things to have. Can they handle the speed of the Oregon team? I mean, those are all conversations to be had, and you could question a lot of, is Riley Leonard good enough throwing the football to win a game where teams can – there's a lot of questions where you can look at Notre Dame and say, there's some holes there. There's some concerns. They're like everybody else. But if you're going to come at me and say that Notre Dame is soft, you're either trying to instigate get a response out of me, or you're just clueless and have no idea what you're talking about, and you're just saying foolish things. Like, we can all say dumb things. I mean, I can say dumb things. Texas's colors are purple and green. Oh, okay. Well, you can say that. It doesn't make it true, and it sounds kind of stupid, to be honest with you, because I can see very clearly that they're not. They're burnt orange and white, So I think your Uncle Roger is just trying to needle you a little bit, or your Uncle Roger's just not real smart. So that's kind of what I would say about that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy that your uncle will eat his words.
Yeah. I'm with that. Look, I mean, Notre Dame is fully capable of making the semifinals this year, but if Notre Dame doesn't, it's not. There could be a laundry list of reasons as to why not. It's not because they're soft, right? Like you go through and look who else is in this playoffs, and you have coaches who have more experience in big games than Marcus Freeman, right? Not all across the board, but I mean, you have guys like, if Alabama makes it, and Kalen DeBoer was coaching in the national championship technically earlier this year. You know what I mean? You have guys like Kirby Smart, who's won 2. You have guys like that, and like I would much rather hear out those reasons than Notre Dame is soft. Like, look, we just got done talking about how young this team was. Nobody on this roster has played in that caliber of game yet.
Right.
Trev,
we're going to do a show next week. We're going to talk about the potential stumbling blocks to a Notre Dame run. That's going to be a segment in one of our show next week. Is if Notre Dame doesn't go on a run of more than a game, or if they get knocked out in the first round, or if they get knocked out in the quarterfinals, what will be the reasons why?
Sure.
And there's things that we will identify as concerns.
Yeah.
And if we did a Georgia show, we would have concerns. If we did a Texas show, we would have concerns. If we did an Oregon show, we would have. I mean, there's no team that's just like, well, I don't know how you're going to beat that team.
Correct.
And there's been years, like when we went into the college football playoff in 2019, it's like, I love this Clemson team and I really like Ohio State this year, but I don't think those teams have a shot in heck of beating LSU this year.
Sure.
I mean, they literally could have scored 100 points on Oklahoma if they wanted to in the playoff that year. And literally, I think they could have. And they said, nah. So, I mean, that's just kind of where I'm at, man. I just don't. I'm going to buy your Uncle Rogers and going to eat his words. And I think your Uncle Rogers is a little bit of a knucklehead, to be completely honest with you. Let's roll.
Were you going to read this one? Or
yes.
All right.
Good reminder from Irish Catholic. We discussed this one beforehand. Which of these contracts would you buy, sell, or hold, each to win $1 if the team wins the Natty? So I think, does he want us to do a buy, sell, hold for each one? Would you buy that? Would you sell that? Or would you hold that for each one? Is that what he's asking?
Probably, like the way that I'm reading it is like basically who would I like invest in? Like who would I invest 18 cents in if it were Oregon to win $1 for the national championship? So, I mean, Oregon I'll buy. I mean, just for they haven't lost yet, and like they have one of the best offenses in the country, and they've had experience in big games. So
they can stop the run.
Yep. So, Oregon I would buy. I would invest 18 cents to win $1. Texas, I'm going to hold because on paper, their defense is outstanding. It is. Statistically, where they rank their defense is awesome. I do still have some questions with them offensively. Quinn Ewers is not having the season that everybody thought that he would.
Just can't stay healthy, man.
I know.
He just can't stay healthy.
I know. And so, in order for you to make a playoff run, especially now with them playing in the SEC championship game, they're going to have to play 4, maybe 5 more games if they lose to Georgia. So I'm going to hold on Texas. Ohio State. Gosh, what's crazy is if you would have asked me this question before the Michigan game, I probably would have bought it. I'm probably going to sell it, to be 100% honest with you. I have a lot of question marks now about where Ryan Day is at. I have my opinions on why I think they lost to Michigan. I think a lot of it is his ego and trying to prove that he has a physical football team and will actively go out of his way to not play to his team's strengths. And I have a lot of questions about Will Howard in big moments.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. Yeah. So Ohio State, I'm going to sell. Georgia. Georgia, I'm going to hold on. I hate to do it. It's definitely not a buy for me, but just with the experience they have at quarterback with Carson Beck, and Kirby Smart has coached in these types of games before, it's hard for me to completely sell it and say, no, Georgia won't win a national championship. But do I think that they will? No, but not. It's definitely not enough for me to buy. And for Notre Dame, God, I've already not bought Jeremiah Love as being the best player in college football.
Trevor about to get himself run out of town by Notre Dame fans, boy. I'll tell you what, man.
No, Notre Dame, I'm also going to hold on because I also have questions about them as well. How well are the injuries going to hold up in the playoffs? So far, it hasn't really been an issue. Started to see a little bit of it against USC after Christian Gray trotted out there after a 99-yard interception and was out there the next play on defense. Going to be interesting to see how the injuries hold up. Offense, I still have some questions about to see what they're going to do in the playoffs. So Notre Dame, I'm going to hold. Definitely not selling. And then Penn State, I'm going to sell. I just don't think that they have the offense that can make a playoff run. I like their defense, but if you go through a lot of their stuff,
a lot of their front seven.
Yeah. I do like their front seven on defense. Offensively, they remind me a lot of Notre Dame 2022 with a better quarterback. They can only run. They have a really good tight end. It kind of reminds me of that. If Notre Dame had better quarterback play, I think that year as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
they remind me of a lot of Notre Dame 2018. They have a quarterback that can do some really good things against most teams on the schedule, but in the big games, he's not gonna make plays. That's how I feel about Drew Allen. Like, Drew Allen's a good quarterback. He's just not a championship quarterback, in my opinion.
Sure.
Interesting stuff there, Trev. I would actually almost, like, if I'm looking at it this way, I'd almost buy Penn State just because it's so cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
fair enough.
I'm with you on Oregon. I'm buying that. I'm buying Texas. I'm holding on Ohio State because I do think Ohio State has the talent to win a championship, because I think there's certain ingredients that go into a championship. Do you have playmakers on offense? Check. Do you have a defense that can shut people down? Check. Do you have a balance as a team? Kind of check, although there's some questions. The big thing I have about Ohio State, the reason I'm going to hold, I want to see how Ohio State bounces back in round one. And specifically, I want to see how healthy their line gets, if at all. And I want to see how Will Howard bounces back. That's what I'm curious to see, because there's a new Ohio State fan in our chat, Mr. Bucknuts, which he said he had made a comment that I think you have to give some validity to. He said the Bucks have a Michigan problem, not a league problem. You will see. And I was like, that's kind of fair.
Fair, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's almost kind of like Michigan's in their head, and they don't look at that game the same way they look at other games.
Sure.
You can't really, I mean, you can't really necessarily push back against that, Trev. I mean, we've seen this in the past where, you know, like certain teams just for what, like we talked about this with Clemson and Syracuse. When Clemson was in its heyday, like the only team that could give Clemson a run for that few years in the ACC, they'd have a randomly just don't show up against the Pitt game. But you had that 1 year with Lamar Jackson at Louisville, and the only other team that had any success really against them with any consistency was Syracuse, who beat them in 2017, almost beat them in 2018. You know what I mean? And you're just like, there was 1 year where Clemson ended up blowing them out in the second half. I think it was 19. But it's like they were losing like 27-21 in the second half at one point in time, and then Clemson just kind of put it away late, kind of like Miami did to Duke a couple weeks ago, where it's a lot closer than the final score. It could be that, and that's why I'm holding. I want to see how they bounce back in the first round, because they're most likely going to play a Tennessee type of team, perhaps a Bama type of team, depending on how some things go. I want to see how they bounce back from that.
Yeah.
And I want to see if their line can get healthy. That's the biggest concern for me for Ohio State. So I'm going to hold there. I'm selling Georgia. I'm buying Notre Dame. I'm selling Penn State as a team that can win a championship, but I'd almost kind of buy that just because it's only 7 cents. And just say, you know what?
What's 7 cents?
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. But here's the thing. I think every team in this list outside of Penn State, if they got hot, is capable. They have the roster to win it all.
Sure.
I just think that certain teams are just beat up enough, or we've seen enough of it to think that they're probably not going to get hot.
Sure.
That's kind of the way I look at it. So good stuff, Irish Catholic.
Buy, sell, hold from BK's personal chef. On a beautiful sheet of glistening snow, Notre Dame wins their home playoff game by 17 plus, built upon a 250-yard rushing game.
It depends on who they play. So I kind of want to hold it because I want to see who they play first. But if it goes how I felt, I've seen some people make this prediction. Joel Klatt actually made this prediction. And Joel Klatt's had some really bad takes lately, but he actually had Notre Dame getting the 5 seed and playing Clemson as the 12. If Notre Dame gets Clemson on a snowy field, they will annihilate Clemson.
Yeah.
And they will win by 17 plus, and they will run for 250 yards. Yes. Clemson is just not a really good team this year. And the biggest disappointment for me for this football team has been their defense, especially their front seven. And they've got a lot of talent. TJ Parker up front. Sammy Brown has had an All-American caliber freshman year. But a lot of their defensive line that I expected to be really good this year just hasn't. Peter Woods hasn't made the jump that I thought he would make. Peyton Page has just been kind of okay. DeMonte Capehart has just been kind of okay and banged up. They're just not a great team. And the results against teams with a pulse kind of shows that. As I pointed out in my debate with Bill, Clemson has played 4 teams this year with a winning record. 4. Those 4 teams are Georgia, who beat them by 31, Louisville, who beat them by 12, and it wasn't that close. Clemson scored last late to make it 12.
Yeah.
And then they lost at home to South Carolina. The only other one was a 24-20 win at Pitt, and they needed Cade Klubnik to have a long touchdown run with minute left to win that one.
Yeah.
They're not good. So it just depends on who they play. If they play Bama, I mean, I think Notre Dame. I'm not afraid of Bama. I've said this a million times. I'm not afraid of Bama. And would they beat them by 17? No, I'm not going to go there. Even with the snow and all that stuff, I'm not going to go there, to be honest with you. But I do think that on a snowy field, that the run game would be a driving force behind Notre Dame having success in that situation. So Clemson, I buy that. If it's Bama, I sell that because I think Notre Dame will, could get to 200 yards against them. Can they get to 250 and win by 17 plus? That'll be a little bit of a tougher haul, to be honest with you. A little bit of a tougher haul.
Yeah, I'm with that. I like my one piece of advice, because I love it. I love where your head's at, BK. I do, but the teams that Notre Dame is going to face in the playoff aren't all going to be similar to the teams that they face in the regular season. And we can just expect Notre Dame to win by 17, 20, 25. Now, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope Notre Dame goes into the playoffs, and no matter who they match up against, they're ripping off, 17-point victory. I mean, their margin of victory in their 10-game winning streak was 30.7. That was their average margin of victory, right? Now, Stanford and Florida State and teams like that, teams that they really kind of laid the wood down on, not making the playoffs. It's a different kind of team. So again, now for the snow part, absolutely rushing will be the driving force. But I mean, if Notre Dame is beating teams by 17 points in the playoffs, that's going to leave a lot of room for excitement. So I hope you're right. Next one from BK's personal chef. Buy, sell, hold. Christian Gray has a pick and at least 2 pass breakups in the first playoff game.
I'll buy that. I think Christian Gray, with some time off, is going to come into the playoff really good, really, really. Because number one, he's going to get tested a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be lack of opportunity. If he doesn't get a pick and 2 breakups, it's not going to be a lack of opportunity, because I think teams are going to study Notre Dame for a couple weeks and watch number 15 and be like, I know he's a freshman, but that guy is really freaking good.
Yeah.
And Christian has struggled down the stretch. And I think after some time off, I think Christian is going to look a lot more like what we saw the first month of the season before he got injured.
Yeah.
Than what he's looked like. And he was, that's the thing that sucks about the USC game, is he was starting to look like his former self in some of those games, at least at times in some of those games. But like even the Virginia game where he got beat by Malachi Fields, and a couple times in the Florida State game, you're just like, he's not trusting his technique. He's getting grabby. And that's when that's sometimes can be a sign that the guy's not confident. Can also be a sign that the guy's just freaking tired, exhausted. And I think Christian's a guy that's going to really benefit from having some time off. And so I'm going to buy that. I think Christian's going to bounce back with a very impressive performance. And if you know anything about Christian Gray, you're going to know he's going to be very motivated to come back and prove people wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna buy that one too. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be by 17, but I do think that whoever Notre Dame has in the first round will be in a lot of situations where they will have to pass. I think they will be down. So, yeah, and to Brian's point, I think they're going to be targeting 29, because number 15 just gave you about 10 different reasons why you shouldn't target him when they played USC.
And it wasn't an anomaly either, Trev.
No,
right?
No,
it was. I mean, he's been doing that. He's been playing at that level for a while, and I don't think a lot of people. I think Notre Dame fans have figured this out, but I don't think people that haven't watched Notre Dame really understand how fast Leonard Moore is.
There's a video, and when I find it, I'm going to post it on the board, but it's of Christian Gray's pick six.
I saw that. Yeah.
And if anybody needs a video to show how fast Leonard Moore is, I mean, I saw how fast he was on the strip
against Louisville.
Yeah, against Louisville.
It was even more impressive in person, Trevor.
Oh, I bet.
Like, it was like, I'm like, he's going to score. And I was like, no, I think Xavier's got the angle. And then you're like, dude, where'd he come from? Like, he can book.
Yeah, he moves. I mean, yeah, Leonard Moore can speak.
You're talking about is really impressive.
It's insane.
It's really impressive.
It's insane.
Yeah, he's a pretty good player. He gave up 105 passing yards to Georgia Tech, is what Pro Football Focus said, because they count that 60-yard gain on him. I talked to somebody in the program that was a blown coverage by a safety. Leonard's just so fast that he squeezed on that seam route so quickly that it made it look like he was in coverage. That's how fast that kid is. It was not his guy. He was playing cover 3.
He got
so
he got penalized for it because he's too fast.
Yeah, because I was like, is that on him, or was that? And I was told that was not on him. I mean, which is really funny. But since then, he has given up a grand total of, that was, let's see how many games ago that was. That was Georgia Tech. So they've played 5 games since then, and he's given up a grand total of, that's 14, 12, that's 26, that's 37, that's 27. In those 5 games, he's given up a grand total of 64 passing yards, and teams have completed 6 passes on 17 attempts since then. So I'd say he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's decent.
He's doing pretty good. What's funny is Army went 1 of 1 for 11 yards. Virginia went 1 of 3 for 12. Florida State went 1 of 1 for 8. Navy went 1 of 2 for 6, and then of course, like I said, the Georgia Tech game. So he's been pretty good.
Yeah,
That's pretty good. Yeah, he doesn't stink.
Another buy-sell hold from BK's personal chef. Ohio State loses their first playoff game due to an inability to out-physical the team that they play.
Well, I got to hold that because I don't know who they're going to play. I mean, football is a game of matchups, Trevor, and for whatever reason, Michigan just has Ohio State's number. I mean, that's you can't dispute that.
Sure.
This Ohio State team is not a physical football team. It's not. Even as good as their defense is, it's not necessarily because they're a really physical team. They're a very fast defense. They're a very well-coached defense, but they're not a super physical defense because they don't have super physical players, and they coach to what they have, which is a lot of quick, aggressive guys. But let's not forget that Ohio State is not a team that just got ran on every single week. Coming into the Michigan game, their 3 previous opponents went under 100 yards rushing. Penn State only went for 120. Nebraska only went for 121. Even Oregon, who had the best performance against them, only went for 155 and only averaged 5 yards a carry. And then prior to that, it's 116 against Iowa. You guys may not have watched Iowa play this year. They're still not a great offense, but they did score 28 points a game, and they did have a running back that rushed for over 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns in Caleb Johnson. And, Ohio State was one of his worst performances of the season early on. They haven't really ran the ball that well lately, but, a week after going for 206 against Minnesota and 166 against Washington, he had only 86 against Ohio State. So, it just depends on who they play. Do I think that Tennessee could out-physical Ohio State in an 8-9 matchup? Possibly. But I also think that Tennessee would have a tough time scoring on Ohio State's defense as well. Because I don't think Tennessee has the speed you need to really exploit the issues that Ohio State has in coverage. And so, I think that it'd be a very hard-fought, close, low-scoring game like a lot of Tennessee's games are. It just depends on who they play. If they play Indiana again, they're going to do to Indiana kind of what they did last time. I don't know that they'll be as convincing, but it's a bad matchup for Indiana. Yeah, because Indiana can't out-physical Ohio State. There's a chance that Ohio State could play Indiana. So it just depends on who they play, Trev. That's really what it comes down to for me is who do they get matched up against? Who was the team? Was it Tennessee that they were matched up against in the most recent playoff bracket? Was that who it was?
Yes,
I think it was, right. It was Ohio State versus
8-9
Tennessee, right? Well, here's my thing. Depending on what happens in the Oregon game, I could see Ohio State being. Bill and I talked about this. I could see Penn State if they get smacked falling below Ohio State. I could see that. I could see if Texas beats Georgia in somewhat where they're clear. I could see Ohio State leaping ahead of Georgia and being the 7 seed instead of the 8 seed. I could see Ohio State even going up to the 6 seed if Penn State and Georgia both get smacked. I could see that. Well, that's going to change things a little bit. Them being matched up against Tennessee in the first round creates an opportunity where they could get out physical, and I may buy this. I don't know that I would pick them but I still don't think I'd pick them to lose just because Tennessee has even more issues than Ohio State, and Tennessee's issues have been more prominent on a more consistent basis with their inability to score. So it just depends on who they play. So I'm going to have to hold that for now to see kind of who they get. But as of right now, I'd probably sell that because, again, this is a team, like you said, Trevor, a week ago, nobody would have thought that. And, yeah, they went on and had a bad game against Michigan, but I promise you the team that they're going to play is going to have an equally bad loss. If they get Tennessee in round 1, you're like, well, what if Tennessee plays like they did against Arkansas?
Sure.
So that's
I'm going to sell that they lose. I don't know if Ohio State loses in the first round of the playoff, but I'll buy the fact that they might not be the most physical team out there.
Yeah.
You go and you look at 2022, right? In 2022, Ohio State lost to Michigan 45-23, also at home.
Yep.
And then the next game that Ohio State played, because they didn't play in the Big Ten championship game, they took Georgia down to the wire 42-41.
And would have won if Marvin Harrison doesn't get knocked out of the game.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. And also
Georgia could not cover that kid.
No, but you're not going to tell me in a game like that Ohio State's offensive line was as physical as that
No,
Georgia
they couldn't
front
run the
seven.
ball. That's why they lost at the end, because they couldn't run the ball.
Right.
But when you got that kind of skill in the perimeter, Trev, to your point, the other thing too that backs up your point, Trevor, is these young receivers are going to be rested.
Yeah.
This offensive line is going to be rested because they're going to have 3 weeks off, like Notre Dame does, and like all these other teams do that aren't in the championship game. So I just got to see who they play.
Sure,
that's my big thing. But we'll see. Let's get to the next one.
Buy, sell, hold again from BK's personal chef. Only 4 or fewer total SEC Big Ten teams are left in the playoff after the first round, according to your respective playoff prediction.
I think that's very possible, because I have a feeling that the way the bracket's going to shake out, I have a feeling that you could get some conference matchups in round. It's going to be hard to avoid conference matchups in round 1. The way that the current seeding is set, even if there's some slight movements because of teams getting beat in the championship games, I don't think it's going to be enough to avoid conference rematches. And the other thing too is, if you're not going to have conference rematches, then a lot of those teams are going to be playing each other. If it's not a SEC on SEC or Big Ten on Big Ten, it's going to be Big Ten versus SEC. That's just the reality of it. So in the second round, you're going to have 8 teams in the second round. Okay. You're going to have an ACC team or a Big 12 team or a Mountain. So there's 2 of those. And then you've got a chance to have, Notre Dame is 3. So then it's going to be, it gets down to who are going to be some upsets. But it's just, it's possible that you could end up having less than 4. But it just depends on what the matchups are. But I think if I had to predict, I would say that there's I'd probably say in those 3 rounds, I'd say that there's a good chance that the way the matchups are set, that 3 of the winners will either be from the Big Ten or the SEC. Because if Clemson loses to SMU, which right now I predicted they do, then you won't have another ACC team. If so you're going to have Notre Dame as an independent, and then you're going to have the Group of 5 team or the Big 12 champ, and then the rest of the teams in the league are going to be ACC or Big 10 teams, right? And if Notre Dame gets Arizona State, then literally it's impossible for there to be less than 5 teams from the ACC or the Big 10 or the SEC in the second round. You know what I mean? Because he's talking about in those quarterfinals, it'd be impossible. If Notre Dame gets the Group of 5 of the Big 12 champ in the first round, it's going to be virtually impossible. The only thing that could change that is if Clemson upsets SMU and SMU stays in. Bama gets knocked out. Now there's a greater chance it will be 4 or fewer. But if the way that I think things play out, Trev, and Notre Dame moves up to 5 and Penn State moves down, then I think there's a very good chance that Notre Dame gets Arizona State or Iowa State in the first round. And every other game is either SEC versus SEC, Big Ten versus Big Ten, or Big Ten versus SEC. I think the rest of the field is going to be made up of Big Ten and SEC teams. So I would sell that based on how I think it's going to go. But there is a scenario where that's possible. It just would take a lot, in my opinion. It would take Clemson beating SMU and SMU staying in. Outside of that, I just don't know if it's possible to have less than that. Because as of right now, Trev, if SMU wins, besides Notre Dame, what non-SEC or a Big Ten team is going to be in the playoff outside of the 5th conference champion?
None that come to mind.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you then would what? You'd need that number 12 seed to beat number 5. So let's say Penn State stays ahead of Notre Dame and they get the you'd need Arizona State or Iowa State to beat Penn State or Texas, depending on how it goes, right? Mm-hmm. And then you'd need Notre Dame to then beat whoever. That's the only way that you could have less than 4. Yeah. 4, less than 4.
Yeah. I mean, only thing that I'm going to say in pertains to this is it's funny watching the committee do everything they can to load up the playoffs with Big Ten and SEC teams, and then also say they don't want there to be matchups between the SEC and the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big Ten. At some point, it's going to happen.
Well, here's a thought. Leave Miami in like they should have been.
Crazy.
Here's a thought, so. You're the ones they're going to make a really ugly first couple rounds because there's going to be like a couple good matchups, and then the rest are just going to be like a bunch of rematches.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get Ohio State versus Oregon again in round 2 or something stupid like that. You're going to get Texas and Georgia have to play again. Like Georgia's going to be the 7 seed, Texas is going to be the 2, and Georgia's going to win. And we get to see round 3 of that, which no one wants to watch.
Yeah, you could see Ohio State, Oregon again. You could see, yeah. Buy sell hold from Coach Bent 574. The College Football Playoff Committee was most excited about Ohio State losing, which put Penn State in the Big Ten title game, so they wouldn't have to make an actual decision about whether to have Notre Dame jump Penn State or not. You can now wait for the results of the Big Ten championship.
I'm going to sell that because I think that the decision to drop Penn State below Notre Dame after playing in the conference title game would be harder than dropping them at the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I sell that too. Buy, sell, hold. The only scenario that Notre Dame isn't the 5 seed is if Oregon loses a close game to Penn State.
No, I've said this the other day, Trev, and I think you and I are on the same page. If Oregon and Penn State play this phenomenal, just great back and forth game where Penn State's got the lead, Oregon goes ahead, Penn State goes back ahead, Oregon goes back ahead, and Oregon wins on their final drive. They put a touchdown in, they kick a field goal. So not like the Ohio State-Penn State game where Penn State kind of played like crap and Ohio State played like crap, and it was another, I'm talking like Penn State USC from 2016. I'm talking like, just a great back and forth game, kind of like the Oregon Ohio State game was a little bit. But if it's like Notre Dame Louisville, then I think they fall behind.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a scenario where Penn State loses just a great back and forth game where they would say, look, they proved themselves worthy of being there. They went toe-to-toe on a neutral field with the number 1 team in the country and were a play here, a play there. I would actually support that, to be completely honest with you. I would. I would say I think not that I think Penn State should be ahead of Notre Dame, because they don't. They shouldn't. It would be if you thought they were better than Notre Dame going into the Big Ten title game, and they just went toe-to-toe for 60 minutes, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with your number 1 ranked team. What's your justification for dropping them down now? That would be my thing. Now, if Penn State loses by a touchdown and they're just clearly not the better team, like Louisville Notre Dame was, then I'd say they should fall behind Notre Dame. And now the argument is, should they also fall behind Ohio State?
Yeah, because
because that would be and I would argue yes. Like there's this thought of, and Bill brought this up today, and I was shocked that he said it, and I agree with him, but he brought up that he thinks there's a chance that Penn State falls behind Ohio State as well. Because head-to-head, Ohio State played a tougher schedule. They won at Penn State. They both have 2 losses, and then they'd have a common opponent loss.
Yeah,
where Ohio State lost at Oregon by a point, and if Penn State lost in neutral field by 7 to 10 to 14 points, I think you'd have a good case to say Penn State not only falls down behind Notre Dame, but they fall behind Ohio State as well. And then now what that would do is that would help them eliminate some of the potential for round 2 rematches.
Sure.
Because right now, if Ohio State stays at 8 and they beat Tennessee, then they move up and then they would play Oregon again. And, I think that would not be something that the committee – so I think they would try to drop Georgia down to 8, Penn State down to 7, Ohio State to 6, and then Notre Dame at 5. Then if all the higher seeds win, you'd have 5 Notre Dame against 4 Boise or 4 Big 12 team, depending on whether or not Boise beats UNLV this weekend. Because if Boise loses to UNLV, then I think the Big 12 team moves up to 4, and then the UNLV's at 12. So they'd beat UNLV or Arizona State. That would match them up against Boise or the Big 12 champ, maybe Clemson in that situation. Then 6 would be Penn State, right? Ohio State would be 6. That would match them against number 3 SMU or number 3 Boise, depending on how the weekend goes. Then you'd have number 7 Penn State matched up against number 2 Texas, and now you'd have number 8 Georgia matched up against number 1 Oregon. Now you have no second-round rematches. I think that would be a very legitimate thing that you could look into and say, so then Ohio State would, because in that scenario, Ohio State jumps Georgia and Penn State in that scenario. So I could definitely see that shaping up. Because if you just leave Ohio State ahead and say, well, Georgia and Penn State were there and they lost their conference championships, we're going to leave them there. Okay, fine. Let's see that Oregon-Ohio State game again. That no one outside the Big Ten is going to care about.
Sure.
So that I could see that. I could definitely see it because I think that stuff's going to have to factor into them because this is an entertainment thing as well. And they've shown that they care about those things. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. We did have a super chat. So you and we're still on the same page about that. If it's a barn burner back and forth game, that there's no reason to not move. If you didn't think Penn State was worse than their name now, then you shouldn't move them. Or you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Not what you think they will do, but what you think I'm saying what they should do. I'm telling you what I think they should do. If you already think that now, then you shouldn't make that move.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm at. Yeah. Absolutely. Super chat from Dad. Thank you, Dad. Miss us. Terrence and Ashley Bergen are back. Just joining, not sure this topic was covered. Buy, sell, hold. Can our Irish faithful show up in December at home and create a great home environment for a home playoff game?
I think they can. Absolutely. I mean, look, there's a lot of people excited about this game. A lot of people trying to get tickets. A lot of people, a lot of alums are buying or a lot of season ticket holders are buying extra tickets and then selling them to other Notre Dame fans. I hope that continues. And it's not just Irish Breakdown fans that are doing that, that it's also, that they're doing that with other Notre Dame people as well. But yeah, I think there's a good chance for that. It's not a given that it's going to be a super full Notre Dame stadium. There's going to be a lot of people from the other team, but it just depends on who they play. Like if it's Arizona State, I think it's going to be a much bigger Notre Dame crowd than if it's Bama. And if it's Bama, you're going to see a lot more Alabama fans in the stands than you will see Notre Dame fans because the Notre Dame fans are going to be like, well, yeah, I'd like to sell it to a Notre Dame fan, but this Bama fan's offering me a couple grand for this game. And I'm hoping that the cold will kind of scare off some of them Southern teams fans. We'll see. I want to make a little joke that if it's Indiana, it'll just depend on who if Indiana's playing that night in basketball.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, look, I think it'll be a good environment. I really do. After what happened on September 7th, like the faith in Notre Dame Stadium has kind of been restored week over week. And, the way that I look at it is, Notre Dame Stadium has been at one of the pinnacles of college football for a really long time. And very rarely when you're in a situation like that, do you get to go experience something new at a stadium like that. So I think that carries a little bit of weight too, like being able to be at Notre Dame Stadium for the first home college football playoff game. I think that means something, but I cannot emphasize it enough. If you're listening and you're a part of Irish Breakdown, or you're just a Notre Dame fan that wants to listen to a good Notre Dame podcast here, also be sure to like and subscribe and go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. But also, if you have tickets and you can't make the game, please make sure you go to all extents to sell them to Notre Dame fans. Please, please, please. That is my one ask from somebody that you've probably never met. But
if I was Notre Dame and they were serious about creating a better home environment, if they're serious about it, because I don't think they care. I'm just going to be honest with you. And by the way, yes, Terrence and Ashley, we did miss you guys very much. We have not seen you post in a while. If Notre Dame was serious about this, they would literally mark every season ticket seat. And I would flag every ticket of someone who walks in wearing the stuff of another team, and see if it's in a season ticket type of thing. And if you sell your tickets to an opposing team's fan, you lose access to season tickets for that next year. That's
totally
what I would
on board
do.
With that.
That's what I would do.
Yep, totally on board
now,
with that.
Would I say, like, if I have a friend who's a Arizona State fan, it's my best friend's an Arizona State fan, and I get him tickets and he and I are going to the game together, that's kind of a little bit of a different deal, and yeah, I'd rather you, but you're bringing a friend with you. You're not selling them just to make some money, but that's a rare occasion. That's what I would do. If they were serious about it, Trevor, I'm serious about, hey, we want Notre Dame fans here.
Yeah.
That's what they would do.
You're a better man than me. One of my best friends is an Alabama fan. I told him he has a nice TV that he just bought that he can watch the game on.
Well, you're also young. When I was your age, I probably would have done the same thing. But I'm a little bit older, and I wouldn't say wiser, but just like, you know what? You realize how many few opportunities you get to have experience these kind of things. So
sure.
But of course, I say that now, but that's because I don't have a friend whose team is they? You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So it's easy to say that when I don't have a friend, who because I have family who are Ohio State fans, but there's no way Notre Dame's going to get Ohio State.
Right.
Like, it's just I don't think it's possible
The
at all for that
the
to happen.
the only way that it would in my mind, well, because they would have to be the 10 if Notre Dame gets the 7.
So they'd have to get jumped by Tennessee for some
Right.
reason. And the committee,
Yeah.
Ward Mann already said those teams aren't leaping each other, which is
Yeah.
stupid of him to say, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, cool. All right. Buy, sell, hold from A. Gilmore too. If Carr is the heir apparent at quarterback, he should have taken way more snaps this year.
Buy. Yeah, I mean, they should have got him more work. Now, part of it's not their fault. He did get hurt kind of middle of the season. But yes, agree.
Yep.
Agree.
Yep. Buy. Buy, sell, hold from D. Troll Hunter. Miami is more deserving than Bama in the last spot debate.
I mean, I've said this before. I've argued this on 2 different shows. You can give. So I want to hear from you, Trevor. But I've said this before. I do think Miami's more deserving of Bama, and it's not just because they're 10-2 versus Bama's 9-3. I don't think Bama's that good, man. Like Miami. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
My mic's been super annoying lately. I barely touch it and it falls out. My when I look at Bama and I look at Miami, I don't think Miami's that good of a team. And if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'd rather play Bama than Miami. They could argue, Cam Ward in the cold. I mean, I get all that, but I still that matchup. What if it just is one of those abnormal? I remember watching the Florida State Notre Dame game in '93, and people forget there was snow that week, but the day of the game it was nice. And what if it's been snowing all week and Notre Dame clears the snow off and then the wind dies down and it gets up to 50 or that happens in December in Indiana, Trevor. You know that there's just those weird weekends.
Yeah.
So when I say that, I would rather play Bama. So this isn't oh, you're afraid of Bama nonsense. It's look, Miami doesn't have a lot of great wins, but they have better wins than the committee gives them credit for because I think the committee is purposely tamping down the rankings of the ACC. Duke, for example, is more deserving of being a top 25 team than Missouri.
Yeah.
They just are. Louisville is more deserving of being a top 25 team than Tulane or of Memphis. I mean, Memphis played the worst team in the ACC and barely won. They're just 10-2. It's look, I look at Louisville, for example. They're 8-4 and they have a bad loss to Syracuse. Well, okay. It's not that much worse than Ole Miss's loss to Kentucky. But whatevs. But I look at them and I say, look, they lost by a touchdown to Notre Dame. They lost by a touchdown to SMU. 2 teams that are locked into the playoff, in my opinion. They lost by 7 points to Miami. They smoked Kentucky. They smoked Pitt. They smoked Clemson on the road. They smoked Georgia Tech. They beat Georgia Tech by 12. So, but because the ACC doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt, and I also think they purposely kept those teams out so they could then bump down Miami because you'd have a lot harder case of putting Miami below Bama if you put Duke and Louisville into the top 25.
Sure.
Real hard case to make then. And also I say, look, I don't, and this is where I disagree with Bill today. I think Alabama getting destroyed by Oklahoma is worse than Notre Dame losing by 2 points against Northern Illinois. So, they're a MAC team. I get all that. But I've seen MAC teams on the road this year. I saw Bowling Green go on the road and give Penn State a game. I saw Toledo go on the road and destroy Mississippi State, who gave Georgia a game, who gave Ole Miss a game. You know what I mean? I think this notion of the MAC is the MAC needs to change because you're seeing Power 5 guys going to these teams and helping them to be better football teams. And so I think that's one of the worst losses we've seen. And to get dominated for 60 minutes by Oklahoma, to get whooped for 60 minutes by Alabama or by Vanderbilt, you're not a playoff team. Oh no, I mean, I'm doing the transitive property thing a little bit that I hate, but it's you got beat for 60 minutes by a team that 3 weeks earlier got beat by Georgia State. Think about that. Bama got beat by a Vanderbilt team that literally got beat by Missouri the week before, and 2 games prior lost to Georgia State, who went 3-9. And a week after beating Vanderbilt, got beat by 17 by Georgia Southern. So you're not a playoff team at that point in time. Is Miami a great team? No, they're not. But they're more deserving of Alabama. They're a better team than Alabama. And I don't believe that if those two teams played, it's a given that Alabama would win. I just watched them get their butts kicked by Oklahoma. I watched Miami play an SEC team earlier in the year and destroy them. And that SEC team, who everybody thought was going to get fired, lo and behold, won a bunch of games in the SEC in Florida and saved Billy Napier's job. Went 7-5. Right? Why? Because once they got into SEC play, life got a little bit easier for them. You know what I mean? So I just I don't think Bama's, and it's not 2 wins versus 3 wins. It's these. I looked at these 2 football teams, and Bama looked really good for 2 Saturdays, 3 Saturdays. You know, and then you bring up, well, you do know that Miami or that Alabama and Miami have a common opponent, right? Oh, they do? Yeah, they do. It's called South Florida. And Miami had a more convincing win over South Florida than Alabama did. Well, who cares in South Florida? Well, you guys keep changing the conversation when it doesn't fit what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing is like you keep changing the standard. Well, we don't care about common opponents when it does. And I was having another debate about Notre Dame and Penn State a few weeks ago with someone who I respect. And he kept talking about, common opponents matter. But then I brought up how Notre Dame was far more convincing. It was Tennessee was far more convincing in a win over somebody that wasn't good than another team was. Like, yeah, but Kent State. Yeah, but Kent State sucks. It doesn't matter. Well, then what's the arbitrary cutoff for when common opponents matter? If those common opponents are from the SEC, is that the standard for it? You know what I mean? So, I just look at that stuff. I mean, Miami had 592 yards of offense against South Florida, averaged 9.4 yards per carry. Miami had more passing yards than Alabama had total yards. Bama was at 5.8 yards per play. Right? I mean, just like, okay. I watched Miami this year play an SEC team. And notice people loved Miami till when? Till they got in the SEC play and started, or ACC play, and then it's like all of a sudden, like okay, Miami beats Florida 41-17, blowout Florida A&M, blowout Ball State, blowout South Florida, and then all of a sudden they get into ACC play and all their games are close and competitive. Well, that's the ACC sucks. Well, then why did they look so good in the preseason when all you guys were hyping them up? You know what I mean? So that's the frustrating thing for me.
Sure.
It's all built on perceptions of what leagues were before, not what they are now.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. On the Miami side, it's for all the reasons that you just said. Yeah. But I go through and I look at it, and like Miami's just when I go and talk about do I think Miami is more deserving than Alabama? Yeah, because I think Alabama's losses are really bad, really, really bad. But I was also somebody that said, at some point in the year, Miami was closer to 4-2 than they were 6-0. Sure. Now they weren't,
sure,
right? But you go through and look. They beat Cal 39-38. Cal's not good. They escaped Virginia Tech 38-34. They lost to Georgia Tech. They lost in a really good game to Syracuse, which is like those are quality losses.
Now ranked in the top 25.
Right.
The only thing I'll disagree with you on is I do actually think Cal's a quality team. Cal went 6-6. They have one bad loss. The Florida State loss was terrible. They lost to Miami by a point. They lost to Pitt by 2 points. They lost to Syracuse by 8. The only team that smoked them, NC State beat them by a point. They also beat Auburn by 7 at Auburn. The only team that smoked them was SMU. Now, they're not great, but like to me, my point is Cal is very similar to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And
sure.
Yeah, they had a ugly win over them, but they won.
But it was a win.
Which is exactly what Bill said to me about, but Georgia beat Georgia Tech. Okay, so then don't ding Miami for almost beating Virginia or for barely beating Virginia and Cal because they won. And those are they're the same team. Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech went back and forth for 4 quarters.
Sure.
Vanderbilt went up. Virginia Tech came back and took the lead. Vanderbilt won it at the end. Very comparable teams. Well, Vanderbilt then went on to beat Alabama, and Virginia Tech gave Miami a game, but they didn't win.
Sure.
And that's my point, right, Trev? Not that anything you said is wrong. I agree with all of it, but like that's my problem but that gets dismissed because, well, that's an ACC team. It's just
Totally.
it's hard to do that.
Yeah. Well, and the committee's had an apparent bias against the ACC for a while. I mean, they held out the conference champion. You know what I mean? Like it's so there. I agree with you. I mean, the bias against the
Undefeated
ACC is crazy.
conference
Undefeated 13-0 conference championship got left out. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, they don't have their quarterback. Yeah, but they just beat Florida and Louisville without that guy.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
My favorite is when people say, yeah, but they got exposed in the bowl game. Yeah, when their entire team sat out the game. Come on, dude. Come on. The last time they gave the benefit of the doubt to the ACC, it was not because of the ACC. Can we be honest about that?
Sure.
It was because of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That was because they had 2 ACC teams in the college football playoff in 2020. The winner and the loser of the ACC championship in 2020 both made the playoff. Why? Because it was Notre Dame.
Yeah. Buy, sell, hold from IM Tenzin. More redshirted freshmen will see snaps in the college football playoff now that those red shirts are secured. Kedron Young, Micah Gilbert, and Cam Williams come to mind.
Well, if it's a blowout, yes. Like they're not going to all of a sudden throw Cam Williams into the rotation at wide receiver because he didn't. Because otherwise he would have. I mean, he didn't even get in backup moments.
Yeah.
So, but like if they let's just say they get Clemson in round 1 or Arizona State in round 1, UNLV, and they're winning by like 20 something in the fourth quarter, and they put the backups in. I could see Kedron getting some carries. I could see Micah getting on the field, Cam getting on the field in that situation, but it won't be guys redshirting or now all of a sudden playing 30 snaps a game. I don't think it'll be that.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I don't know if he went in on special teams at all, but I don't think Cam Williams was close to burning his red shirt in the regular season.
No, I don't think he played. I don't know that he played a game. Let me go look here real quick. I don't know that he played a single game this year.
Yeah.
Let's see. Cam Williams, did he play at all? He didn't play a snap this year.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, that's defense. Let me go to offense. He played 1 snap against Virginia, apparently.
So it had to have been the last play where he took a knee.
Yeah.
So then,
Oh, actually, you know what? It was because I think he was one of the he was in that victory team. Yeah. Now, as soon as you said that, I remembered that. Yes, good job. Yep.
Yeah. So, but as far as meaningful minutes, no. I mean, they're not going to a guy who's 1 snap of the year was on victory formation. I mean, if now injuries or something happens to where Micah Gilbert might have to come in and start rotating in a little bit, but he's not going to trot out there in the second offense.
Yeah, not based on where things are now.
Right.
Like if for some reason Jeremiah Love went down or Jadarian Price went down, could I see Kedron Young being a factor in there? Oh, yeah. He's the one that I could see actually becoming a factor, like a factor if there's an injury.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if there was an injury and you're thinking, okay, we don't have to deal with Jadarian Price or Jeremiah Love in this game. And they're like, wait a minute, hold on a second. Who are they putting in at running back? Who's that guy? And he's freaking fresh. Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
I think about that too with like the offensive line. You know what I mean? Like, they're again, not like we're wishing it upon anybody, but if you're the opposing defense and you're like, all right, their starting left tackle who played all 12 games is out. Man, we can get a breather. Who's in? Oh, 6'7", 330-pound Gerby Lambert.
Yeah.
Cool. Or 6'8", Tosh Baker.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, goodness gracious. Buy, sell, hold again from IM Tenzin. ACC title game is a college football playoff elimination game.
I buy that it is that. I sell that it should be that. It shouldn't be, but I think that it is because I do think that even if Clemson barely wins, I do think they will drop SMU out. I don't think they should. I think they will. And if that happens and I'm Jim Phillips, I'm contemplating talking to my conference attorneys. I know you guys are dealing with this Clemson and Florida State crap right now, but we need to contemplate whether or not we need to file a suit against the College Football Playoff Committee.
Yeah.
And the people running that, because that's not the College Football Playoff Committee, but the entity that dictates the College Football Playoff and runs it. I would consider doing that.
Yeah.
It's very obvious that there is a clear intentional bias. Well, your team lost. Okay, but last year our team didn't lose, and you invented some reason to not put them in. And yeah.
Yep. No, I agree.
Because why is Ohio State in? They just lost their starting left tackle. They lost their all-conference center. I mean, they've got injuries. Why is it only the quarterback? And that team kept winning after they lost their quarterback. It wasn't pretty, but they kept winning. So why is it only applied to that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I unfortunately buy this as well. Now, I do think it is an elimination game if SMU wins.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, look,
Clemson's out unless they win. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, 100% they are.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Somebody asked too, Andrew says, why don't they put cameras in the room for debate? Should be total transparency. The reality is if they wanted to rig the system, they would just have those conversations before and they would know what to say going into the meeting.
Right.
They would, trust me, they would find, I mean, guys, like, do you think that think of like a Senate hearing and they want to, you telling me they're not having those conversations before about what they're going to say and not say? And of course, the same thing here.
Oh,
They would work all that stuff out in backroom deals and all that kind of stuff. And then when they get in the room, it's like, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. This is easy peasy. We're all on kind of the same page. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with reality TV.
Right.
It's all scripted.
The only true reality TV show I've ever seen is Truman Show. That's it. That's the only one. Have you ever seen that movie?
Oh, I love that movie.
Good.
I also know how I'm going to take us out today. Buy, sell, hold from Riker Ferg. Lincoln Riley will go to the NFL after this year at the first opportunity.
If he gets the opportunity, I'm buying that. If Lincoln Riley gets offered a head coaching job in the National Football League, he will take it before they finish the sentence. Hey, Lincoln, this is so-and-so, general manager of the Bears. We'd like to offer you our head. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, he'd be out the gate. Yeah.
100%.
I'm with that. Buy, sell, hold. If LSU doesn't win the national championship next year, Brian Kelly will complain about certain receipts.
Yeah. He'll complain about something. He'll blame somebody. There'll be some justification for why his team can't win. Yeah. I mean, you're hearing it now, like, wow, we can't pay all that kind of money. Well, hold on a second. You told us that the reason you left Notre Dame to go to LSU was because of resources. Now you're at LSU and you're complaining about resources. There's been a common theme here. The theme is you, not the resources.
Well, and what's even crazier is after he talked about how like they didn't have enough money for whatever, like a couple days before that, he was in an interview and was like, we're going to be very aggressive in the transfer portal because we've saved and set aside funds.
But he's making it seem like they can't do both. Well, we're not spending in high school recruiting because we're going to put that towards the portal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You're talking about that in order. Like Brian Kelly is smarter than people give him credit for. He is. He knows what he's doing. That's an excuse. It's just he knows how to make excuses in ways where it doesn't just come across as an excuse. Play tougher league. Dude, you got your butt kicked by a 6-6 Big Ten team. Shut your pie hole. Just quiet. Pipe down now. The real coaches are talking. Run along.
I'll buy that. Buy, sell, hold from Riker Ferg. Flag planting should be banned. With all the fighting going on after last weekend's games that involve flag planting, somebody is going to be hurt.
Yes, that should. I mean, first of all, every single head football coach should let players know, guys, if we win a game, you don't do this. And no excuses. You won't play again for me if you do this. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't put coaches in that situation.
Sure.
League rule. Here it is. Every league makes this rule. If you plant the flag anywhere on the field, that is destruction of property, and it will be cause for suspension. Simple as that. But the Big Ten showed it's not that big a deal. Like, can we be honest? The Big Ten made it clear it's not that big a deal. If it was a big deal, then they would have fined those schools more than $100,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, I buy that. Look, I am not someone who I'm someone like Ohio State acted like little whiny you-know-whats, getting all in their feelings by them planting that flag. If y'all had played that hard during the game, maybe they wouldn't have planted the flag. So, Khalil Mullen says, you got to learn how to lose. Okay, cool. You got to learn how to win.
Yeah.
You've beat this team 4 years in a row. It's the second game in a row you've beat them on that field. What exactly are you proving? What are you accomplishing? Like win with class and lose with class. You fight your butts off, you battle, you scrap, you do everything possible within those 60 minutes of game action to win. Once it's over, there needs to be a level of respect giving to your vanquished foe. And that doesn't mean, you worship at the ground they walk in, but you don't go grab a flag. You should expect to win. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of my beef with it. You're acting like the team that hasn't been there before. And that's my issue with it. But yeah, they should ban it because to his point, somebody's going to get hurt. This is going to turn it. And they brought up freaking pepper spray for the Ohio State and Michigan game. I mean, it's going to get bad. And once teenage testosterone kind of gets going in that situation, dude, I've seen brawls. You've seen brawls. Coach doesn't run and say, hey guys, knock it off. And all of a sudden everybody stops. Right. I mean, it's just, he's right. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Yep.
And when you start having flags in the equation, guess what? Now people have weapons in their hands, essentially, and it's not necessary. Stop getting in your feelings when people plant a flag and grow up and win with class and don't plant a flag. That's really what it comes down to for me. It's not something that should be allowed in college football.
With that?
Because what they're going to do is say you can't have flags. I mean, that's just what they're going to do. Your teams can't bring flags in the stadiums. Well, that's stupid. Just tell them, make it a rule where if you do this, you get suspended. Now the fear is like, okay, well, you win a game, you don't have any other games left. Some kid who doesn't care about hey, you're our designated flag planter because we don't care if you get suspended. I get all that and say, look, okay, you got to put some teeth to it. It's like cheating. It's like if you want teams to stop getting tampering in the portal, okay, fine. Here's it is. You get fined $1 million and you can't go to the portal for the next 3 years. That's what they do. I don't know if they still do it because I don't watch baseball anymore, but if you followed Major League Baseball, remember when the international signing period would open up? If you broke rules in international signing, they'd fine baseball teams, say, but you can't sign an international prospect for the next 3 years. And that you fix that real quick.
Sure did.
And the player you tamper with is no longer eligible to come play for you. So it's not even worth it. It's not like, hey, I don't mind if we get dinged for tampering because we went and got the next Joe Burrow, and we're going to win a championship, and that championship season is going to create enough money for us to pay for this. We don't need the portal anyway. It'll help us. No, he can't play for you. You know what I mean? Like that's how you put some teeth to it. But at the end of the day, they don't care. Because if they cared, they make rules to make it harder. And yeah.
By so hold from Riker Ferg, calling Ryan Day born on third base, thought hit a triple is being soft. It should be born on home base and thought hit a home run at the bottom of the ninth, 3-2 count with 2 outs to win the World Series.
I'm selling that because in order for that to be the case, Ryan Day would have had to have won something. The whole point about hitting a triple is you actually didn't get home. You thought you had done something special, but you're not going to get home. If he was born at home base and thought he hit a home run, that means he just won a championship. And like if he'd have won the title in 19, this would have been true. You won with Urban's team. Larry Coker. This is what you're describing is Larry Coker. That's who you're describing because he won something. Ryan Day didn't win anything. So you can't get home, man. You got to, walk off, win the World Series. And that whole winning thing is left for Ryan Day when it comes to those big moments. So I'm selling that, Trev.
Yeah, I'm selling that too. You got to win something to hit a home run.
Mm-hmm.
Buy, sell, hold from B Jam and 41. This has been the year of crazy upsets, and that continues in the playoffs as this year's national champion will not come from any of the first 4 round bye teams.
It's possible. I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's a given that one of the top 4 teams is going to win a championship. I'm going to probably sell this though, because I think those teams have a little bit of I think Oregon and Texas are probably the 2 best teams in the country, along with Notre Dame right now. I would say, but yeah, I'm going to sell that just because. Well, I'm going to sell that just because I don't know who's going to win it all. I don't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I mean, Oregon's number one. Texas might be the most talented, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, there's no team that's just head and shoulders better than everybody else. Oregon's the best team when I talk about they deserve the number one seed based on their resume. Do I think that they are the best team in college football? They're the best team in college football in regard to where they should be ranked. Do I think I would have them, people have to do this, the hypothetical game, would I have them favored to beat all 11 teams in the playoffs? No, I wouldn't. So because it's all about, do you play that one or two teams that match up well with you or not? I mean, that's what it comes down to. So, like, if you tell me Ohio State is going to be the 8 seed that wins, I don't feel great about Oregon winning at all. If it ends up being, Bama versus Tennessee, I'd feel a lot better about them being in the playoff. Or if it's Penn State against Tennessee, I'd feel a lot better about them having a chance to win it. So I just, like I said, yeah, they're the number one team right now. They flat out deserve the number one seed. Do I think they're the best team in college football as far as just the team? No, I don't. They're the best team in college football based on resume, and it's not debatable. I don't think they're the best team. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one, Trev.
Yeah, I'm going to sell just from the. I mean, it's just so crazy. I mean, to your point, I buy that it's been a crazy year of upsets.
Yeah,
but
will you be shocked if the champion's from one of the teams that plays in the first round?
No.
Yeah, same.
No, but in the same light, I also wouldn't be shocked if it was Oregon. You know what I mean?
Or Texas, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Like
I'll be equally not shocked.
Yeah.
There's a couple teams in the first that get buys that would shock me. There's some teams that play in the first round that would shock me, but I would say there's going to be more teams that are capable of winning it playing in the opening round than teams that are getting buys. And that's where you could say maybe you should buy it just because the odds.
Yeah.
If you were to say, like, okay, let's ask this, Trev. I'm going to list the teams that I think are capable of winning minimum 3 games and winning a title. And you tell me if you agree with this group, if there's anyone you'd remove or anyone you would add. Okay. So here's who I think is capable of winning a championship. And I know there's one team for sure you're going to disagree with me on. And I think I know who it's going to be. We'll see. Teams that I think are capable of winning a championship.
Okay.
Oregon.
Yep.
Texas.
Mm-hmm.
SMU.
Okay.
Notre Dame.
Okay.
Georgia.
Okay.
Ohio State.
Okay.
That's it. That's
okay. I agree with, and now again, I said in one of the previous shows that like I haven't really watched them a whole lot, but I have a hard time believing that SMU could win a national championship. That would be mine.
Study them this weekend. If they beat Clemson, watch them. They would be at the bottom of my list, but this is a really good SMU. I've watched a lot of SMU football this year, guys. They're athletic. They've got a dynamic quarterback, and they've got a really salty defense. And here's the thing, I've seen them play teams that Notre Dame has played. Notre Dame usually looks better. It's not by a ton. Like, they're a good football team. They would rank in the bottom couple, but they're and everybody thought, well, they barely beat Nevada and they barely beat, they lost to BYU. Different quarterback now. Kevin Jennings was rotating with Preston Stone at the time. Now he's their guy. And they are really good. I think people look at SMU and think AAC team, new to the ACC, not a big-time team, blah. They think of all these other things. And what I'm telling you is this is a really good football team. Do I think they're a favorite? Are they in my top 3? No. Would I be shocked if they won? A little bit. Would I say never saw that coming? That I would not. So I think all those teams can win. I don't know why that's changed all of a sudden. So that's where I'm at. I think, to me, Trev, that's it. I don't think Tennessee's capable of winning it. I don't think Penn State's capable of winning it. I don't think Alabama's capable of winning it. I think Alabama's capable of making some noise and winning a game or two, depending on their draw.
Sure.
But I don't think they're capable of winning 4 straight games and not having a what the F was that moment.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you there on Alabama for sure. Like I said, for me with SMU, like I'll be paying real close attention to them playing Clemson. So again, like the only thing that I look at with them is just like who they played and who's on their schedule and things like that. And outside of that, I don't know the team enough to give an opinion whether I think they would or wouldn't. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I just got a text from a friend of mine, and he said that he thinks that the Dorn 10 from earlier in the show, talking about his uncle Roger, he thinks he's making a reference to Major League. And if he is, I'm totally disappointed in myself for not recognizing that. Totally disappointed in myself. If that's actually what Dorn 10 was doing, I'm totally disappointed in myself for not recognizing that. I didn't even think of Roger Dorn. I'm like, as soon as he texted, I just saw that text and I was like, what? How did I not see that coming? So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Buy sell hold from B Jamin 41. Notre Dame will have names on the back of their jerseys during the playoffs like they did for the bowl games.
Not the home game. Maybe the next few rounds. Maybe. I'm gonna hold on that because I'm not thinking about that. Or I'm probably gonna buy on that. We've seen them having the regular season this year, right? Didn't they have names in their jerseys for one of the
for the Shamrock series? They did.
Yeah.
I mean, I will buy it because you said just during the playoffs, because what they do is that, they put the names on the back of the jerseys for the bowl games, and in the quarterfinals, it's 4 of the 6 New Year's bowl games, and then in the semifinals.
Right.
Yep. So I'll buy that.
And I believe they put names on their jerseys for the playoff game in 2018 and 2020.
They did.
Was it also 2022? I know they did it in 2018. I don't remember if they did it in 2020.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
Okay. Against Bama in 2020?
Yeah, because I remember seeing Nick McLeod's name on the back of his jersey when Najee Harris
was hurtling.
That's literally how I remember it.
That's how Najee knew who he was jumping over. He could look down and be like, hey, who was that? Oh, look. Yeah, I'm actually looking at the highlights from the game now, Trev, and they did have names on the back of their jerseys. So we've seen them in the postseason twice do that. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
So precedent. So I'll buy that.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will never pay a recruit the kind of money Michigan did for Bryce Underwood.
Buy, and I support that. I'm a big believer you don't give that kind of money to an unproven player. I don't care how good he is in high school. We have seen so many kids like him go to college and not be that. Whether it's injury, whether it's just they don't pan out, whether they don't. There's a million reasons why. I mean, Bryce Underwood's. I mean, Jimmy Clausen, I think does not get the respect he deserves for how good he was in Notre Dame, but he wasn't as good as he was made out to be. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like he's a bust. Well, he wasn't a bust. He played on a bad team. That's not his fault. If you take Jimmy Clausen off those 08 and 09 teams, they're probably 3-9 again. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, he gets a bad rap. Well, they were bad because of him. No, they were bad in spite of him. He was the reason that they even won some of those games or were competitive in some of their losses. But he wasn't what they made him out to be. Even then, he wasn't. We've seen plenty of these guys that are just this can't-miss prospect that just end up going to college, and they guess what? They can miss. And I just I'm just not a I can't get down with that, Trev. Nope.
I know I have a history of agreeing with you on the show, Brian. I could not agree with that any more than I could agree with anything that you've said since I've started working with Irish Breakdown. Legitimately, that is crazy to me. Is paying somebody millions of dollars before they have stepped foot onto a collegiate football practice facility to practice, right? Like, you don't know what's going to happen. What if he has, what if you're giving this guy millions of dollars and he, God forbid, tears his ACL in camp, and you're just shoveling out all this money to a kid that you're not even going to see until he turns 20, and then you're going to hope that he's good. Like, that's crazy.
Yep. I mean, he's the number one pro style quarterback, let's say. Let's look at some of these 5-star, no-brainer, number one drop back quarterbacks according to Rivals. 2022, Cade Klubnik. 2021, Quinn Ewers. 2020, DJ Uiagalelei. The number 2 guy was Harrison Bailey. 2019, number 1 was Bo Nix. Number 2 is Graham Mertz. Number 3 is Ryan Helinski. 2018, Trevor Lawrence. He ended up being legit. Remember how good JT Daniels was coming out of high school? He'd have got that kind of money. Nope, didn't pan out. 2017, Davis Mills was number 1. Number 2, Hunter Johnson. Number 3, Jake Fromm. None of those guys deserve that kind of. I mean, this is the same ranking. Number 2016, Jacob Eason was number 1. Number 2 was KJ Costello. You know, the top dual threat quarterback in that class was Shea Patterson. Malik Henry would have got himself a big deal because he would have been looking for it. I mean, just for every Trevor Lawrence, I can give you 5 Cade Klubniks and DJ Uiagalelei's and Shea Pattersons and guys like that, at least, that didn't pan out. And now you've just invested $10 million into that kid. And then if you try not to get, and you try to get out of it, he's going to have some money that you gave him to be left over to sue the crap out of you to get that money. Now you got to pay him. He sucks. And then there you go. Or you pay him all that money and then he comes and he balls out for you. And somebody from the SEC says, well, we'll pay you twice that to come play for us. And now we're actually investing in a more proven commodity and he bails on you. You know, like hard pass. Yeah. I would be so pissed if Notre Dame paid that kind of money for a high school kid. Now, if let's say there was a Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence type of established college quarterback who wanted to come spend his final year at Notre Dame and they had a loaded team, then it would be worth it to me.
100%.
Right?
Absolutely. But it's all about being proven.
Right.
All about being proven. Couldn't agree more.
Right.
Buy, sell, hold from B. Jammin 41. Tennessee is the most underrated team in the college football playoffs. They are one of the most balanced offensive and defensive teams in the country outside of Notre Dame.
I am definitely selling that because I disagree with the entire premise of you saying that they're balanced. I don't think they're balanced. I think their scoring this season is predominantly built around a couple 60, 70-point games early in the season against really bad teams. They scored 69 against Chattanooga, 71 against Kent State. Since that 71-point output against Kent State, they've only scored over 30 points 3 times, and that was against UTEP, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. I think Tennessee has a really good defense.
Yeah.
Really good defense.
Yep.
And their defense just kind of wore down late against Texas or against Georgia because their offense kept putting them in bad situations.
Yeah.
But if you look at their record, for example, Tennessee's scoring offense against Power 5 teams only, they are only averaging 27.9 points per game. And if you look at other teams in the playoff, Texas is at 28.8, Ohio State's at 29.9, Bama's at 29.9, Iowa State would be at 30.1, Georgia's at 30.2, Arizona State's at 30.6, UNLV's at 31. UNLV's played 4 games against Power 5 teams this year. They're 3-1. Penn State is 31. Clemson's 31.1. Let's see here. Oregon's at 36.1. Boise's at 37.7 against 3 Power 5 teams. They are actually counting Washington State and Oregon State as Power 5 in this one, just for the record. SMU's at 38.2 in 10 games against Power 5 teams. Indiana's at 40.2. Miami's at 40.2. Or Indiana's at 40. Miami's at 40.2. And do you know who the number 1 scoring offense in the country against Power 5 teams that have played more than 1 game against Power 5 teams? You know who that offense is?
Is it Notre Dame?
It's Notre Dame at 42 points a game.
Ew.
Now you want to look at the scoring defense. Notre Dame is number 3 overall in scoring defense. They're also number 3 against Power 5, or they're number 5 against Power 5 teams. Tennessee is 12th in scoring defense against Power 5 teams. Indiana's higher than them. Oregon's higher than them. Texas is higher than them. Penn State's higher than them. And Ohio State's higher than them. So I don't think their offense is all that balanced. I think their defense is really good. I think their running game is pretty good. I think their passing game leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah. And I think especially if you're in a playoff game, where there's some elements involved or you're playing a pretty good pass defense, I think Tennessee actually, to be honest with you, is a touch overrated. I would not have them. I think Indiana would beat. If you want to use the whole hypothetical, who would be favored? Okay, I don't know what Vegas would do. They'd probably give the SEC team, but if I'm setting the odds, I would set Indiana as the favorites. If I was just like, who do you think is going to win? I'd pick Indiana to beat Tennessee. I would. I think they're a little overrated. Now, does Tennessee deserve to be in the playoff? Yeah. They deserve to be in over Alabama. They deserve to be in over Miami. They don't have as bad of losses as Alabama does. I think them and the conversation would be them versus Miami would be an interesting one. But I do like the fact that they do have that win over Bama, right? They do have their bad loss to Arkansas was a close game, unlike Bama's. The Georgia loss was competitive for a while. They don't have a lot of other good wins, to be honest with you, and that's one of my knocks on them. But if you're talking about them versus Miami, they do have a similar record. They do have a better win than Miami does, and their losses are better than Miami's losses. Arkansas and Georgia Tech are somewhat comparable to me of quality of teams. I think Georgia Tech's better for sure, but it's not that much different. But the Georgia loss is way better than the Syracuse loss. That's kind of how I'd put it. That's why I'd say but that's who the debate should have been about, who gets knocked out, Tennessee and Miami, not, and they should both be in over Alabama. So that's where I'm at on that one, Trev. I don't think they're underrated. I think they're either properly placed or slightly overrated.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they're properly rated more. And if you were to ask me whether they were more underrated or overrated, it's definitely more overrated. I'm with you. But that D-line is scary and deep.
Oh, it's really good. And I love Dylan Sampson, man.
Yeah,
he is a really good running back. Really good running back. Sorry. Yeah. I said earlier, I think earlier I said Simpson, but it's Sampson. So the most underrated team in the college football playoffs is, and Joe M said this as well, and I think you're going to know where I'm going here. It's SMU. Like SMU should be ranked higher than Georgia. I think you can make a case they should be ranked higher than Ohio State. I mean, they're a good football team. So I think they're underrated.
Vice hold from Christopher Crosby. Of the three-loss SEC teams, Ole Miss is the best of them. They are also the worst of the three, meaning at their very best, they can beat anybody. At their worst, they can lose to anybody.
I mean, I kind of talked about that earlier today with Bill. I think that's spot on. I was on a show a few weeks ago, and he asked me, as a Notre Dame fan, how would I rank the SEC teams in regard to who I'd be most concerned about, and Ole Miss was at the top of my list. When Ole Miss is on, they can beat anybody in the country, and they can beat anybody in the country by 10 when they're really on. They've got dynamic receivers, a really good front seven, skill. Jackson Dart's a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, but when he's on, he's a really productive quarterback. Their O-line can be pretty decent, and they're a really good football team. Really good football team.
Yeah.
But when they're not on, they're very average to bad, in my opinion, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, with pertains to this, the three-loss SEC team. Yeah, I mean, I would buy that. The interesting thing about this is, I mean, the statement of, when they're at their best, they can beat anybody, and when they're at their worst, they can lose to anybody. I think that could be said for a good amount of the playoff teams, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously it depends on who wins some conference championships to see. Like, there's some that, like, I think even Penn State at their best, they can't beat anyone. I don't believe that watching their offense. Defensively, their defense will always keep them in games.
Yes.
But I think their best offensive performance isn't getting them to beat Texas. I don't, right? But no, I mean, we've seen that with other teams. We've seen Notre Dame at their best look unstoppable. We have seen them at their worst. It was September 7th. Yeah. Same could be said for Ole Miss. I mean, the SEC is so tough to gauge because, like, I would have said, like, Alabama because they beat Georgia this year. But then again, like, we've seen how Georgia plays in some big games.
But look how Ole Miss played against Georgia.
Yeah, totally.
Like, that's the thing. Like, they dominated Georgia. Bama started off well and then let them come all the way freaking back because they're not you know what I mean? Like, but when Georgia's on, they stay on.
Sure.
When they're off, they stay off in those games. Bama's like, what quarter are we talking about here?
Sure. True.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's what makes them kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Very annoying. But there's another one that I want to get to right here that I purposely left this part of the conversation out because I knew what he had coming up next.
Okay. Buy, sell, hold again from Christopher Crosby. The up and down season that Ole Miss has had this season is the perfect parallel to the head coaching career of Lane Kiffin. Up and down and up and down.
Buy. And we've talked about this, Trev. This is the first time Lane Kiffin's ever been good where he was supposed to be good, but even then they were disappointing. Because what they've always done his entire career is they'll be really good one year and then the next year they're just not good. And it's usually the next year they're supposed to be good because they were good the year before. And he's never had back. This is the first time if he wins the bowl game, it'll be the first time in his career he's had back-to-back 10-win seasons. He won 8 games at USC, then 10, then dropped down to 7-6, and then the next year got fired. He goes 11-3 at Florida Atlantic, goes 5-7 the next year, 10-3 the next year, 5-5 in year 1 at Ole Miss, 10-3 the next year, 8-5 the next year, 11-2 the next year, and then this year they're 9-3. This will be the first time they've actually had a good season. In the year that they went 8-5, they started their season number 21, climbed all the way up to number 7, and then lost 5 of their last 6 games and fell out of the top 25. Got blown out by Texas Tech in a bowl game. In 2023, they finished number 22, rose up to number 11. So like obviously that was a good season. And then 2021, they began the season unranked, blew out Louisville in the opener, and then jumped in the top 25, and then climbed all the way up to number 8, played a bowl game against Baylor, and lost by 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's just kind of been his MO. And then this year, you look at their team this year, a lot of people are saying they might win it all. They started number 6, and then they're going to end the season outside the top 10 because he's undisciplined as a coach, as a person, and his team. Look, teams are going to be a reflection of their head coach.
Yeah.
Why was Bama so businesslike? Because that's just who Nick Saban is.
Yep.
Brian Kelly tried to get them to be properly businesslike, but they were just kind of soft because he's soft. They were just not always focused on the most important thing because he wasn't always focused on the most important thing. They puckered up in some of those big games because he puckered up in those big games. And no matter what a coach tries, it's like a parent. One thing I've learned from my family and people that I know that are parents is they tell me this when they give me advice about parenting. They say, it doesn't matter what you say to your child. Don't say this, don't say this, don't do this, don't do that. If you do it or say it, they will do it and say it. If you curse in front of your kid and say, now don't say that word, your kid will repeat that word to you soon.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And head coaches are that way. It's like you can tell them all you want that this is the most important thing, but if they don't see that being lived out by you, then it won't matter. And that's Lane Kiffin's that way. Brian Kelly's that way.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true of Nick Saban because Nick Saban was just steady. Dude, it's just the process is the process. It never wavers. That's all that matters. And that's why it played out that way.
Yeah.
It's like think about Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer's incredibly volatile, like intense, focused, physical, tough, but he'd flame out. And that's what his teams kind of did. You know what I mean? It's like they were great when they were great, but then they just kind of got a little bit too much and then boom, they did what they did.
Sure. Yeah. Buy, sell, hold again from Christopher Crosby. If for some reason Dabo Swinney decides he doesn't want to coach in this era of college football anymore, Clemson's first call should be to Fran Brown.
I don't know if it should be. I'd have to think more about that, but I think it will be. Because usually when you make a coaching hire, if you're smart, or not even if you're smart, it just tends to be that way. You're going to go with the kind of polar opposite of what you have. Dabo's from that good old boy network and the all shucks and the Roy Bus and all that. Doesn't want to do the paying players. Doesn't want to do the portal. Fran Brown is the exact opposite. He'll have no problem paying players. Have no problem going to the portal. He's going to be in your face, intense, all that kind of stuff. And he's the opposite of Dabo Swinney. That's not an insult. That's not saying one's better than the other, one's worse than the other. It's just they're just very opposites. Marcus Freeman and Dan Lanning are similar in a lot of ways, young, but they're very different in how they run their programs and all that kind of. So it's one's not better and one's not worse. It's just they're just different. And usually when a head coach leaves and hasn't had success, you kind of want to go in a different direction. And Georgia did that. They had one of the classiest, most respectful, most professional, most decent human beings on the planet as their head coach for a long time, and they got rid of him because they weren't winning championships, and they hired one of the scummiest, dirtiest pricks in college football as their new head coach because they wanted to win. He'd have no problem cheating and doing all the things that Mark Richt really didn't like to do. They went polar opposite of who Mark Richt was. And I'm not saying Fran Brown is like Kirby Smart. I'm just saying usually you go opposite. When things aren't working, you go opposite of what you had. So, yeah. And if you can turn Syracuse around, you can turn Clemson around.
Yeah. Weissel hold for BK.
The first one I did wrong. That shouldn't have been.
Oh, okay.
One. So it's the same one from before.
Gotcha. Weissel hold from BK's last brain cell. Within the next 2 seasons, everyone realizes this is not Nick Saban's Alabama and stop giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Sell that one. They're going to realize this is not Nick Saban's Alabama, but they're going to still give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, listen, folks, I know that this was not a great year for Kalen DeBoer. But Kalen DeBoer is a phenomenal football coach. And as long as the Bama administration and fan base supports him, he will win there. Now, the only way he doesn't win there is if they get impatient and they want to start dictating things to him, right? And do what Auburn did, which is let's just constantly talk about how our coach can't win. And so that way nobody wants to come play here or coach here because we're always talking about how our coach has got 1 foot out the door because we're going to force that 1 foot out the door. But Kalen DeBoer is going to win a lot of football games at Alabama. He's a really good football coach. They will still get the benefit of the doubt because they'll still be good. Will they ever be as good as Nick Saban? No, I don't know that we're going to see a run like that again, especially in the 12-team playoff. I think it's pretty safe to say that if Nick Saban would have been in a 12-team playoff his entire career, he'd have won multiple championships. He wouldn't have won 6, maybe 3 in a 12-team playoff era.
Sure.
So that 17 team gets beat by somebody.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind.
I think for me, and believe me, I'm not one to come to Bama's defense. Like that is not who I am. I agree with you, one, that I don't think they're ever going to stop giving them the benefit of the doubt because they're Alabama, right? Nick Saban put them in a position for what he did with them for, well over a decade that, they will be receiving the benefit of the doubt. I just don't like, and I've heard it from people who aren't Alabama fans. I've heard it from people who are Bama fans. The idea that Kalen DeBoer was going to go, 12-0, 11-1 in his first season and win the SEC championship and be a 1 seed in the playoffs in his first year taking over from Nick Saban is ridiculous.
I did pick them to win the SEC this year, by the way.
You did?
I did.
Well,
I thought because again, I didn't see them losing to freaking Vanderbilt and Oklahoma.
Sure.
And outside of those stupid losses, their schedule was set up favorably because they got Georgia at home. They got, you know what I mean? Like that was really their schedule was set up really nicely.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I thought they're going to be the best team. I thought Georgia would have a better team, but their schedule was going to be brutal. And that's why.
Sure.
Because I didn't see them losing to those 2 freaking teams.
Sure.
They didn't have to play Ole Miss this year. You know what I mean? I knew they were going to beat LSU at LSU. They didn't have to play Texas in the regular season. They didn't, you know what I mean? It was more about the schedule than I thought they were going to be the best team. Now, I did not have them winning the SEC championship, however. I had them getting to the SEC championship.
Fair enough.
I believe is what I had. I could be wrong. I might have picked them to win it all, but I believe I had them just getting to the championship.
Yeah, I had Texas winning the SEC championship. But what I'm talking about are the people that thought it was going to look exactly like Nick Saban's Alabama.
Wait,
like
you don't have to backtrack, Trev.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can still think my pick was ridiculous.
No, I don't think it was from a schedule standpoint. It makes sense. But believe me,
the boss picked Alabama. I'm so screwed.
There's, you know what? That is a genius statement, right? But
now that I think about it, you know what? You should have picked Alabama.
You know what? Actually, I misspoke. They should. No, man.
Well,
but
it was ridiculous because it turned out to be because you're to your point, Trev. In all seriousness, to your point, They aren't Nick Saban's team, which is why they lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt.
Right.
And that's what I missed. I missed that lack of discipline that was not going to be there because Nick was no longer there. So while I don't think my pick was ridiculous, it was very misguided.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you are correct. And when we're just busting chops here a little bit, but you're correct. It was a bad pick because I didn't take enough into account that lack of discipline that was going to come with this coaching change.
Sure. And I was, and also in all seriousness, I was referencing the people that literally believed that it was going to be another Bama Georgia SEC championship and Alabama wins by 2 touchdowns and all this other stuff. It's like, guys, this is going to be a different regime. In all seriousness, give the guy some time. Kalen DeBoer is a fantastic coach. What he did at Washington was fantastic. I mean, in 2 years, he had Washington going from like a 500 record to playing in the national championship.
Yeah.
Just give him some time, man. Give him some time.
Yep. I'm sorry. That was funny. I wasn't going to say anything, but I was like, no, I want to mess with him a little bit.
That was good. Buy, sell, hold from With Your Chest. Following the conclusion of this season, Riley Leonard will be thought of as the best of the 1-year-only transfer quarterbacks this year across the college football landscape.
So it's like he won't be considered the best. He'll be considered the best winner because I've said what I've said about Cam Ward. I don't think he's a Heisman finalist. I think his interceptions proved very costly for them in some moments in games they barely won and games they lost. But Cam Ward was still better than Riley Leonard for the entirety of the season. Now, you could argue the last 5-6 games, Riley Leonard's been better. You could make that case, but you can't ignore September for Riley Leonard. You just can't.
Sure.
So just off the top of my head, Cam Ward was better. Riley Leonard is going to be maybe a better winner when it's all said and done because his team's going to go further. But I don't know. I'll sell that. I'll sell that, Trev. I'm trying to think. I mean, Curtis Rourke. Has been phenomenal for Indiana this year.
Dylan Gabriel was 1-year quarterback at Oregon.
They're the number 1 team in the country. Now, again, if let's say they square off against you, and this is kind of what goes into this question is that let's say they play each other in the semis and Riley Leonard wins, then they're gonna do it that way. So, totally. But I just don't think there's anything that Cam Ward's gonna because I think Cam Ward's career is over. I don't see him playing in the bowl game.
No,
and you're just gonna look at what he did for the entirety, and even with all the mistakes, it's just that's kind of where it's gonna be.
Sure.
Yeah. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's actually a really good point. Like Riley Leonard is going to go down as like the winner. Like you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he's not going to go out and rip you up through the air on defense, but people will remember him for being like the dude just won football games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with that. Buy, sell, hold from Jelaracia. I'm really sorry if I butchered that, but the weather will create significant advantage to Notre Dame and any other northern school hosting a playoff game against a southern school.
Significant advantage. I'm going to sell that. Look, the weather's going to be a factor, but it's not going to be, those teams have no chance because of the weather. Some teams will handle it well, some teams won't. I mean, look, we saw the first time that the Packers, I believe the first loss the Packers ever had at home in the playoffs, I believe, to the Falcons, who not only are a Southern team, but they're a Southern Dome team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so now a lot of other cases, the Packers always won there, and that was part of it. And so, but it's not, it's an advantage, no doubt. I don't think it's a significant advantage for those teams.
Yeah. Plus, I think Notre Dame is going to be one of the few northern schools that would host a home game. I mean, well, if Penn State loses, they'll be hosting a home game. Right now, Ohio State is slotted to host a home game. Notre Dame will. I think that's it, right? Right?
Say that again.
Notre Dame will host a home game, most likely. They're a northern team. Ohio State, if things finish out the way that they are, going to host a home game. Penn State will if they lose the Big Ten championship. I can't think of any others.
The only Southern school that will host a game in the first round is most likely going to be Georgia.
Yeah.
And if for some reason Georgia falls big because they get blown out, then all that would do is simply bump Tennessee up to a home game.
Right.
So there will be one Southern team hosting a home game. Either Georgia does or Tennessee does.
Yeah.
The other three will be Northern games, right? Are we doing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
Right.
the other option is it could be Oregon's hosting, but it also is cold out there.
Yeah.
And we've seen snow in some of those Oregon State games.
Oh yeah.
And then you add the travel part. It's even a further trip for teams.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Another buy-sell hold from Jello Garcia. Because of that, the SEC and ACC will push to move future first-round games off campus.
I mean, they might, but you're just not going to – I don't know that that's going to make a lot of sense because financially it's going to be more costly to do that. So they'll push for it, sure. But I think if you're smart, you don't overreact to 1 year that it happens to be this way.
Yeah.
Because then what's going to happen is just because it's this case this year doesn't mean that next year you're not going to see a couple ACC and SEC schools hosting, and they're going to then be pissed off that they force these games off campus.
Yeah.
And if they push for it, you're going to have Notre Dame and the Big Ten pushing back, and now you have heavyweights going at each other, and it won't lead to what you think it does. What gets nervous is when the heavyweights band together to get things changed. The Big Ten teams are not going to want games moved off campus.
And
Notre Dame is not going to want first-round games moved off campus.
Yeah. And also another flaw in this is believing that they will look at the ACC with any sort of weight and take into consideration one of their suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
If this has told us nothing, is they don't take the ACC seriously.
Right.
Unfortunately. So.
Right. So somebody asked too, they said, why do any of the games other than the championship have to be on neutral fields? The NFL does true home because this isn't the NFL. I really hate when people say, well, the NFL, this isn't the NFL, right? Well, D3, it's not D3 football. This is the level. This is their bowl games. Bowl games are part of what makes the college football situation better. And you're not going to, and there's contracts they have with these bowl games. They have contracts. They're not going to, the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, they're not going to accept, we're just getting completely relegated to the non-playoff situations. They're just not. And then if you piss them off, and guess what? Then they just bow out. And then you just lost a lot of money from those affiliations because they pay to have those games.
Oh, yeah.
So you're sacrificing a lot of money that you're not going to make up by playing home games. So there's legal reasons and there's also practical reasons because you want to give teams certain advantages, but you don't want to give them full advantages. Again, this is not the NFL. And that's why it's college football and bowl games are still matter. And this is the way you can keep them still mattering, even though they don't matter as the Rose Bowl in the way that it used to be the Rose Bowl. It still matters because you've got teams trying to win a championship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also like to one of the previous questions, I don't think weather is like an insane advantage, but like once you start talking about like Penn State or Columbus or South Bend on December 31st, like it could potentially get to a point where like it's hard for people to travel to those games. You know what I mean? Like so yeah, no, that would be a whole lot.
Yep.
That would be a whole lot. All right. Buy, sell, hold. At the end of our playoff run, Coach Marcus Freeman will receive a contract extension, making him one of the top 5 highest paid coaches in college football.
At the end of the playoff run. So the question is going to be, and there's another one about this, does it happen before or after? So my guess would be that they sign him before, but don't announce it till the season's over with.
Agreed.
Or at least they agree in principle before, but in order to make it not do I think Marcus Freeman's agent has been negotiating all year for an extension? If he's doing his job, he has been. But if you're a smart head coach that's trying to win certain things like Marcus Freeman is, you say, look, you handle this. We've talked before the season what I'm looking for. You go do your job. This is what I'm paying you to do. Do I think maybe this week him and his agent sit down and have some conversations? Here's where we're at before you get ramped back up. I'm sure. I would expect it. I would if I was him. And then you say, now go do your job because I got a football team to run. And do I think they could come to some agreement before the playoffs start? Probably. If Marcus Freeman's the man that I think he is, will he want that announced before the playoffs? Probably not. Probably not. I think it would probably be something you wait till after the season, unless they decide, hey, listen, we're going to do it because of this, or this. But I think he would kind of want, well, yeah. I think this staff is really working hard to avoid distractions. You know what I mean? To make sure things don't come up that can distract his football team.
Agreed.
And he doesn't have to be part of those negotiations. His agent could say, hey, Marcus, just, here's the offer. All right, fine. No, whatever. But his agent already knows what Marcus is willing to settle for, what Coach Freeman's willing to settle for, and now go do your job.
Agreed.
So do I think the contract will be done before the playoff run is over? Yes. Do I think they'll announce it before the playoff run is over? No, I don't. Do I think that he will be one of the 5 highest paid coaches in college football? Yes, I do. And because here's the thing, we just saw Notre Dame 5 years ago. I said, no way in hell will the Notre Dame head football coach be amongst the top 5 highest paid coaches in college football. No way. I've said hell twice tonight. I'm sorry. That's not cool. I'm late. My filter's down. But I would say now, I mean, they have arguably the highest paid one of the 2 highest paid coordinator tandems. They just paid Mike Mickens a ton of money to stay. Notre Dame is serious about this now. Will Marcus Freeman become one of the 5 highest paid? I think that he will be now. Yes, I do. And if Notre Dame's not willing to do that, we have to question if they're serious about.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. I think another situation that it could be as well is, there's been pre-discussed conversations with like his agent or with Coach Freeman around like, hey, we are going to give you an extension. But I do think it's going to depend on how far they go in the playoff as well, right? Like, for example, if Notre Dame makes it to the national championship, I think that would boast him to get a bigger contract than what it would be if they just gave him a number right now. Mm-hmm. So I think it could be something where there's a mutual agreement that there will be a contract extension, but I don't know if anything will be signed until after the playoffs, because I think that number could vary depending on what they do.
I think what you could also do is you could also say, hey, look, here's the number. It's going to make you one of the 5 highest paid. And then part of it is we're going to put some championship escalators in there that would include this season.
Right. Yeah.
Because if he's top 5, he's not like, could you imagine if Marcus Freeman, if they made an offer, he's like the 3rd highest paid college football coach and they go out and go to the championship game and he's like, no, that's not good enough. I now want to be number 1. He just doesn't strike me as that type.
True. That's fair. That's fair.
You know what I mean? I think what it would be is like, hey, we're going to put some big escalators in there. And if you get to here, you get to there, you do this, you do that, then you get big bonuses and you get to that number anyway. And when you don't get those bonuses.
Fair enough.
Yeah. That's what I think. I just hope they make the buyout huge.
Yeah. Listen, I'll help pitch in. I'll help some way.
Here's my $1.95. Let's make it happen.
Listen, man, I used to drive for Uber. I can just funnel it into your direct deposit account or something. Yeah. Coach, I'll help.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold from Older Than Dirt. Next week's rankings and seedings will follow yesterday's more logically than we might expect. The committee will have been forced into a corner where dropping, say, a 1-loss Notre Dame behind a 2-loss power conference school might be unacceptable because it will be unexplainable.
I mean, I don't think they're going to be more logical because I think they're just going to stay as illogical as they were last week. It's just going to, again, I think that if SMU loses to Clemson, I think they're going to drop SMU out. Shouldn't.
Yeah.
Shouldn't. I mean, I could see a scenario where I could see a scenario where Georgia beats Texas in a walk-off field goal and they keep Texas ahead of Notre Dame. Could certainly see that. I think they'll be just as bad as they were this past week, in my opinion, or just as inconsistent as they were.
Or that situation that we talked about. If Penn State plays Oregon in just a shootout, like a 2016 Rose Bowl against USC type game, Yeah, I'm with you. Another buy, sell, hold from Older Than Dirt. The committee will also be congratulated by their real bosses at ESPN for putting Notre Dame at 5 versus either the ACC champ or the Mountain West champ or the Big 12 champ, which will provide ESPN one night game with Notre Dame in round 1 and hopefully another Notre Dame game to sell around New Year's.
This is what I kind of buy this because Part of the reason ESPN hates Notre Dame is because Notre Dame's never been with ESPN. And if Notre Dame signed a contract with ESPN would become the biggest Notre Dame homers on the planet because they know Notre Dame's a moneymaker. And that's why ESPN tries to bully them into a conference. Nobody talks about them needing to be in a conference more than people at ESPN. Why? Because the odds are pretty good that they're like, if they want out of the ACC contract, bad, ESPN does. Not if Notre Dame joined. They would gladly re-sign for that bad boy. So if they get into a situation where now they control Notre Dame games, I'm pretty sure that they won't be on TNT. You know, they're going to want to milk that for all it's worth. I mean, think about the opening game of the year, right? And we talked about this at the time, Trev, I believe. But I remember the opening game of the year, and you've got some really good games on. And people are like, you have the Notre Dame game as your primetime ABC game? They're like, yes, you do. You had Georgia Clemson on that day. You had, I think there was one other game that was a big game that weekend. You had Miami and Florida. And you turn that game into the Notre Dame game was your primetime against A&M, who's 6-7 last year, or whatever. You made that your primetime game over Georgia and Clemson. Why? Because it's when we hate Notre Dame. This is why we want them with us all the time. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I think it would be. So they're going to milk that for every dime it's worth, and then hate Notre Dame and every other.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Buy so hold from Older Than Dirt. Nobody from the Power 2 conferences will be happy playing the final interloper at number 6 versus 11. Whichever other non-Power 2 conference team lands there, because it could be an embarrassment to the Big 2, maybe twice, in fact.
Oh, I'll sell that. I don't think coaches look at it like that. I mean, because they're from the Power 2 conference. Maybe some administrators feel that way, but coaches are going to be like, give me whoever.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like if Kalen DeBoer has to play Notre Dame, he's going to look at it as a tremendous opportunity. I mean, that's why he's where he is. He didn't get to Alabama being afraid of playing people.
Correct.
If Kirby Smart falls down to 9 and he's got to play, I don't know, let's say Georgia falls down to 11 because they get blitzed by, is he going to be mad that they got to play Notre Dame? No, he's going to look at it as a great opportunity. We beat Notre Dame at their place, and we're going to sell the heck out of that on the recruiting show, baby. You know?
Sure will. Yeah.
So, no, administrators maybe look at it that way, but you know, you said nobody from those conferences. Players and coaches aren't going to look at it that way.
Right.
If I'm reading that correctly.
Buy so hold from Ham Sartman. Marcus Freeman will sign his contract extension before the playoff is complete.
We talked about that. I don't think he may sign it. I don't think it'll be announced. And I don't even know if they'll sign it. They'll at least agree to it in principle. And like Ant BR had a comment, like they might agree to it. Like, hey, if you guys win this, if you get to this, if you get to that, then the number goes up to here. You know, that might be part of it too. And then just let's see how it plays out. So I'm gonna say that they'll at least have agreed to one. I'm gonna say that they'll at least agree to some sort of thing before, but it won't get announced until afterwards.
Sure. Buy so hold from Birdo 2121. Ryan Day looks eerily similar to Willie Woolley.
So I wasn't gonna put this in there, and then I was like, "Who the heck is Willie Woolley?" And then I have found a picture, and that is Willie Woolley. Buy. Just gonna buy it and move on. Just gonna. Although I say Ryan Day doesn't normally smile like that, and his eyes are way more squinty. But other than that, I'm gonna buy that. So, yeah, let's go ahead and move right through that.
Buy so hold from Jim Halloran. The College Football Playoff Committee will play games / move teams around in seeding to, and will buy so hold each one of these to give Notre Dame a harder path. Buy so hold.
So,
favor the SEC in the Big Ten.
Buy.
Avoid rematch games.
I'm going to buy it because I think that's what they're going to do. But so far, with the way they've done their seedings, they haven't done that so far. But I think in the end, the final one, I think that they will.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
So because I don't think they're going to try to give Notre Dame a harder path. I don't think that's their goal. I don't. Because if they wanted to do that, they'd have Notre Dame. They would have found some reason to have Notre Dame behind Georgia or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
It would be really hard to do that with them getting the 5 or 6 seed.
Yeah.
It would be tough. Buy, sell, hold. Alabama and the SEC get preferential treatment from the College Football Playoff Committee.
Buy.
Big buy.
Easy buy.
Buy, sell, hold from Full Life. The College Football Playoff is an invitational tournament and not one based on actual results and standings.
I mean, to a degree, yeah, you have to buy that. I mean, that's why Florida State didn't get in last year. That's why Ohio State got in over TCU. I'm not saying that they were necessarily wrong, but that's why. I mean, if it was Wisconsin that was sitting there with that same record and same result, I don't think they'd have dropped TCU out. It's why Miami got dropped out this year and Alabama's a 9-3. So, yeah, I buy it.
Buy, sell, hold from Reese's and Pieces. Each of the Power 4 conferences will be won by a team in their inaugural season in that conference.
So, Big Ten, I do have Oregon winning.
Yep.
I have Texas beating Georgia. I have, yeah, I do. Yeah, because I've got SMU beating Clemson. I've got Arizona State beating Iowa State. Yeah. Yeah,
I think I have all of the same, but I think I do have Clemson over SMU.
Okay. I'm going to encourage you to watch a couple SMU games before you resubmit your picks. At least you're honest about having not watched them a whole lot, but yeah, we'll see. Got one. Thought it went over. It didn't go over.
There we go. Buy, sell, hold from Ballpeen, Jeweled Shillelagh. If Bama and South Carolina's seasons were swapped exactly with each win and loss and all details, quarterback ankle injury against LSU, etc., Bama would still be ranked ahead of South Carolina.
Yeah, they would be ranked ahead of South Carolina, and they'd be more justified to be ranked ahead of South Carolina. Right? I mean, because basically what I think that he's saying is that if Bama had South Carolina's results, they'd be ranked ahead of South Carolina, which means South Carolina should be ranked ahead of Bama, is how I take what he's saying. And I buy that.
Okay. See, if they were swapped exactly, then South Carolina would have won. And South Carolina also would have had the win over Georgia.
Mm-hmm. The point being that Bama was going to get in no matter what.
Okay.
Is I think the point that he's making. Meaning, if Bama had South Carolina's resume, Bama would get in.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay, I got you. Buy, sell, hold.
South Carolina actually is more deserving, but because they're not Bama, they're not getting in. That's how I take the question.
Okay. Okay. I get what you're saying.
I think he's agreed with it. And I buy that. I buy that.
Buy, sell, hold. You would rather Notre Dame play and beat Clemson in the first round of the playoffs than Bama.
Sell. If the option is beat Clemson or beat Bama, I'd rather play. Like, I have some personal payback that I want Notre Dame to give to Clemson because of last year. I do. But if you're going to talk about what's best for Notre Dame, though, what's best for Notre Dame is beating Bama. If they go beat Clemson, the only way they get any respect for that is if it's a destruction. But literally, Clemson's lost to every good team they've played. I don't know what you get out of that.
Right.
You know,
right.
I just if it's I'd rather play and beat Alabama. Now, if you're talking about what's the easier game, Clemson's easier game. There's no question. But I just don't know that you get a lot out of that, to be honest with you. So, you know me, Trev. I'm not one who wants to create it. Let's create an easy path for no. Screw that. I want Notre Dame to have to play Ohio State and beat Ohio State and play Bama, play Texas, I don't want this cakewalk like Michigan. I have to use an example. Remember when Michigan's first Final Four under John Beilein?
Yeah.
They beat Florida and Kansas, and it was a great run. And then their second one, they didn't play anybody higher than a 7 seed because all the teams got upset. They played Loyola Chicago in the Final Four, and then got to the title game and got blasted by Villanova because they haven't played anybody until they got to Villanova. Like that's kind of cheap to me.
Sure.
You know, I now do I want them to play the best teams? I mean, okay, maybe give me a nice first round, you know, or second. If I got to play Bama in round one, give me, you know, Arizona State in round two or something like that. You know what I mean? But other than that, it's like, look, I'm not one of those people that wants to. I don't want this team. I don't want that team. If you don't want, if you're sitting here as a Notre Dame fan and you want them to avoid certain teams, and you don't think this Notre Dame team is that good, because if you think this Notre Dame team is what I think this Notre Dame team is, I want to see where. And here's the other thing too, Trev. If you lose that game, then you now know where you are you have more of a truth about who you are as a program. Where if you're like, man, we went to the championship game and you beat Arizona State in round one and Boise in round two, and let's say there were some upsets and Tennessee beats Ohio State and then beats Oregon, and you beat a Tennessee team that's missing their starting defensive end and starting quarterback, and you get to the title game and then you get beat by. It's like we went to the championship game, yeah, but you caught every single possible break. That doesn't no. But then you play one of those teams and you're like, hey, look, we proved ourselves. We can beat those teams. Or we played those teams. They got us. So we know now where we are. Now, if an easy path opens up and they win the title, I'll take that. But I'm saying is like you get some easy path to the semifinals and get blasted by the first good team you play. That doesn't like, I don't know how much I like that. I want them to play the best teams. I just do. And especially in round one, you're at home. That's your chance to knock one of those teams out at home. And that's where I'm at on that one, Trevor.
Yeah, look, man, here's where I'm at with the playoffs. And this might upset some people. Some people might agree with it. I don't care who Notre Dame plays, man. I don't. If they have to go play Georgia in round one, or, you know, if they have to play Texas at some point, they have to play Ohio State, or if they have to play Iowa State at some point, or if they have to play Arizona State or Clemson, like, I don't care, man. I don't. Because the way that I view it is I have enough faith in this football program that whoever they play, Notre Dame's going to be able to beat. I firmly believe that. Now, like, I understand that, you know, there's a lot of talk around, like, I don't want them to get the easiest path and have there be some out. Well, hey, newsflash, guys, there's always going to be an out. If Notre Dame beats Alabama, the answer is going to be cool. They beat a team that lost to Oklahoma by 21, and they lost to a team, or they beat a team that lost to Vanderbilt. If they go and beat Georgia, the narrative is going to be, well, they beat a team that beat Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes. Like, it should, listen, guys, I don't care who they play. I also don't care about what the margin of victory is. If they win every game by 17, fantastic. If they win every game by 2, I also don't care, because the way that playoffs work is if you win, you move on. So, look, I get it. I understand wanting to predict matchups and think about who it is, and all that's going to come, because by Sunday, we're going to know.
Right.
We're going to know exactly the path that they're going to have to take, but I don't care who it is. If Notre Dame has to play Ohio State in the first round, sick. If they have to play Arizona State or Boise State, cool. I don't care. I just want them to play, because I have enough faith in this football program that whoever lines up against them, I have faith that our guys will come out on top.
For me, Trevor, I look at it a couple different ways, where I say I do care about who they play. If you're giving me the choice, simply because there's more to it than just the game and how I'm looking at it. And there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. Like, so to me, it's like, okay, what gives you the bigger boost as a program? What gives you all? And to me, that's what I'm saying. It's like beating Clemson does nothing for you right now.
Sure.
Beating Bama does something for you. Beating Georgia does something for you. Beating Ohio State does something for you. That's kind of where I'm looking at it.
Sure.
Right? Like, beating Arizona State does nothing. If you beat Arizona State in round one and then go get beat by, you know, Texas in round two, no one's going to respect your team.
Sure.
Right. At some point in time, you got to beat somebody good. So it's more big picture. But to your point, it's like, look, I have faith in this team. I'll play anybody. I don't disagree with that at all. At all. And I also think that Joe M makes a really good point. He goes, I would rather have a tough team at home than to waste the home field advantage on the team we're going to smack.
Sure.
That's kind of also where I'm coming
Sure.
from. Is plus you get to knock that team out. So you played Clemson at 12 and you knock them out. So what? Now you may have to play Bama in a couple rounds. I'd rather, on a neutral field, I'd rather get them at our place, looking at it from Notre Dame standpoint, and say, hey, we're going to go handle business. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. I look at it more. I don't know what you want to call it, like macro view, I suppose. And it's just kind of like, to some degree, also, it is completely out of Notre Dame's control who they end up
Sure. Sure.
So it's just, I guess that kind of is what fuels my whoever it
Fair.
is, it is, but I also
Fair.
agree with you, like beating Georgia or beating Alabama will do much more for your program
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
I'm there.
But I get your point. You're looking at this team
Yeah.
right now, just this team, and bring on anybody. Shouldn't back.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my point too with you, Trev, is if you're saying I want to play this team because I'm trying to duck that team, that's just you, then they're going to get beat by a team like that at some point in time anyway.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you rather play
Yeah.
that team at home if you're
Oh,
that afraid of
absolutely.
them?
Oh,
We
absolutely.
do have a couple quick super chats.
Yeah.
Super chats here.
Super chat from Tyler, call me Ty. My apologies there, Ty. Long break. Buy, sell, hold. If Notre Dame wins 2 playoff games this year, this team would be the best since 1988.
Oh boy, it depends on what happens in the semifinal, how they lose in the semifinals. Because I still have to look back at that 1989 and 1993 teams and say those teams didn't lose to Northern Illinois and they didn't lose in the semifinals. So no, I would not say that. I say the only way I would say this team is better than those teams is if they go all the way to the championship game and lose to somebody that's just not that's really good. But honestly, I'd have to say that barring them winning a title, I don't know that this team will be better than 89. That 89 team was phenomenal, Trevor. I don't think people, especially younger fans, appreciate how good that team was and how difficult that schedule was. So I'm gonna repeat it again. That 1989 team, the only team that they lost to was the national champion Miami team. They beat a Virginia team that finished ranked 18th in the opener, 36-13. They played number 2 Michigan, who finished the year 7th, beat them 24-19 in Ann Arbor. They played a Michigan State team that finished that year 16th and beat them 21-13 at home. They played number 17 Air Force on the road, beat them 41-27. Beat number 9 USC, who finished 8th, 28-24. They beat number 7 Pittsburgh, who finished 17th, 45-7. They beat number 17 Penn State, who finished the year 15th, at Penn State by 11. Lost to number 7 Miami, who won the title that year, and then beat number 1 Colorado in the Orange Bowl by 15. They won the title for the team that beat them. Like, that was a phenomenal team. With all due respect, the only way this team tops that team is by doing the one thing that team couldn't do, which is win a national championship. And I would say the same thing, honestly, Trevor, about the 1993 team. The only thing that this team can do, in my opinion, to be better than that 1993 team who beat number 3 Michigan 27-23, who blew out USC that year, who beat number 1 eventual champion Florida State. And yeah, you had the bad loss to Boston College, but they lost to number 17 Boston College, who finished ranked 13th by the same margin that this team lost to Northern Illinois. And then they beat number 7 Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl. The only way that I can say that this team is better than that team is if they win it all. Beating Arizona State and Boise in the first 2 rounds does not tell me they're better than that 1989 team who went 7-1 against teams that finished ranked in the top 15. So, yeah. I'd have to say that 89 and 90. You could argue 93 because 93 schedule wasn't as tough outside of Florida State and Michigan. It wasn't as tough. USC was a little down that year. That 89 team. I think the 89 team was better than the 88 team. The only difference was 89 had to go to Miami. 88 hosted Miami.
Sure.
That's the only difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch them. I've seen games. Like, I have definitely watched some of, like, the higher marquee games, but I didn't get to watch them the way that I watch this team now, which is unfortunate. Not like there's anything I could have done to change that fact. But I would say best. I would say the best since '93, and I look at it from this simple evaluation tool. From like my standpoint, is that '93 team was the last one to win a major bowl game. And
Yeah, that's true.
If Notre Dame wins 2 playoff games, that means that in the quarterfinals, they would have won
Sure.
a New Year's Six bowl. So that's how I would look at it. So I would say the best since, but maybe not better than.
Best since 93?
Yeah.
If you say best since 93, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, that's where I'm
If
at.
they
Best
win 2
since.
playoff games, they will be the best Notre Dame team since 1993.
Yeah.
So they're just not better than the 2 teams since 1988.
Yeah.
But 1993, no doubt about it. The only thing that could change that, Trev, is if they get like blown out in the semifinals.
Sure.
But I don't think they will. I think if they lose in the semis, it'll be a good football game. That I would agree with. If they win the 2 playoff games, it will be the best team since the 93 game. 100%.
Yep.
100%.
That's where I'm at.
Yep. And we got one more super chat from Andy Milton fan.
Thank you for the super chat. Buy, sell, hold. The chef's name at LSU is Irony, and he'll be serving Brian Kelly and LSU fans a big bowl of I told you so as he watches Notre Dame in the college football playoff.
Hope so, because if Notre Dame loses in the first round, then it won't be so much of that. But if Notre Dame wins a couple games, then absolutely I'll buy that.
Yeah. Yep.
Which one, though? They got 3 chefs. I can think of a couple names for the other 2 that wouldn't be very pleasant. And since I've already cursed twice in this show, I'm not going to say those. So
Buy, sell, hold from Berto 2121. ESPN benefits from having multiple ACC teams in the playoff, along with multiple SEC teams, or multiple SEC teams given ESPN's contract with both conferences.
Sell, because ESPN does not want the ACC contract anymore. And I think the more bad things that happen to the ACC that makes them opt out of that deal, the better they're going to feel about it. So that's, I think, part of the reason why the second buy, sell, hold, which is ESPN is not campaigning for the ACC like the SEC and should be. I buy that they should be, but the reason they're not is because I think they want to get out of the ACC deal. So they're not doing things to push the ACC because they want the ACC to continue to crumble. And their thought is, well, if we keep screwing over the ACC, then those teams are going to want to get out. And when those teams get out, we now have a much easier legal option, legal justification to get out when the opt-out season comes, which is in a year or 2. Because the ESPN has an opportunity to get out of that deal in the next couple of years. And the worse things go for the ACC, the better it is for them to be able to say, we're out. Because I don't think they can afford all these TV deals with the way that they're hemorrhaging subscriptions and ad revenue and all that kind of stuff. They're not the some of the money they've given for NBA. It's like, I don't think they can afford all that. And so if they can get out from underneath the deal with ACC, the better for them, in my opinion. So that's why I sell the first, buy the second because they should be.
Yeah,
but I'm selling the first one.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm buying the second one. Unfortunately, they're not campaigning for the ACC like they should be in the SEC. But that's unfortunately the world that we live in, Brian.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Buy, sell, hold from Huberbra. Ashton Genty's draft stock and pro career are being hurt by the amount of carries he's getting this year.
I don't know that I can say that I'm learned enough about what the NFL values to where I could say that definitively. I think I would lean towards yes, but I don't know that I could say that definitively and say for sure, because we've seen some other running backs in recent years have a ton of carries and the NFL still thought highly of them. So, I mean, what was it? What year was, the kid from Wisconsin?
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. He had a mess of carries and he still got picked. Well, second round, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I actually like this question because me and my buddies talk about this a lot. And I would make the argument, draft stock, no, because running backs and historically have been taken, like good college running backs get taken around like the second round. Like you've got to be a next level guy to be taken in the first round, in my opinion. Ashton Genty might be able to do that, but pro career being hurt, I would agree with, because running backs in the NFL have a short shelf life as it is. and which is why like a lot of the big Wisconsin running backs that went into the NFL, like you look at guys like Monte Ball, who had a really good college career at Wisconsin, and then he was prevalent in the NFL for like a year and a half. You have guys like Melvin Gordon, who had an insane college career, went into the NFL and was good for 2.5 seasons until he got not healthy. You know, you look at guys like Jonathan Taylor, who it's the same thing. He's still producing, but that guy is questionable almost every week.
Is he really?
Yeah, he is, because he has a lot of mileage on him. And then there's a lot of people who ask, well, what about Derrick Henry? Well, Derrick Henry had one season in college where he saw a lot of touches.
Yeah, he's also a unicorn because
Right.
of how big he is. Like I know
True.
J.K. Dobbins has never been able to stay healthy in the NFL as well.
Mhm.
And he had a ton of carries also. It's a
So-
good way. It's an interesting way of looking at it, Trevor. So you're
Yeah.
saying it won't hurt his draft stock. That'll be what it is. But as
Mhm.
far as his potential for longevity, yeah.
Yep. And anymore, the way that I look at it is if you're a team that's on the cusp, like of making a Super Bowl run, and you need a running back to get you over that hump, you know, you need a guy that's going to come in and produce for 2 to 3 years, go get that guy and draft a running back high. But there's programs, or there's organizations in the NFL that still look to draft running backs and partially build around them. And if you're going to get a guy with a lot of mileage on you, that's going to be tough because their shelf life is not that long.
Yeah. Question was asked regarding this. Was LaDainian Thompson the last running back taken top 5? No, there's been 2 running backs taken very recently in the top 5. Saquon Barkley was the number 2 overall pick, and Leonard Fournette was the number 4 overall pick. Year before that, Ezekiel Elliott went 4th. So there's been several running backs in recent seasons that have gone in the top 5. Trent Richardson was taken 3rd overall. So there's been a lot of those since then. Yeah. Darren McFadden was 4th overall. Reggie Bush was taken 2nd overall.
Where was
Ronnie Brown and Cedric Benson were both taken in the top 5 in 2005. They were all after. Adrian Peterson was 7th.
Okay.
So yeah, there's been a lot of backs since since LaDainian went top 5. LaDainian was taken 01 at number 5. So there's been a lot. Been a lot. Not recently, like in the last 2-3 years, but I mean, like I said, like within the last 7-8 years, definitely. What did I say? 17, 18? Yeah. 18 with Saquon was the last time. So I mean, that was what 6 drafts ago, 5-6 drafts ago.
That's pretty recent.
Yeah. And then the year before that also. So
another buy sell hold. The College Football Playoff Committee is hoping that Clemson beats SMU on Saturday so that they ultimately don't have to decide between the 3-loss SEC teams and Miami, although they have already decided who they would favor.
Well, I sell that. I mean, they've already had to decide between the 3-loss SEC teams, Miami, and they chose the 3-loss SEC team. So they've already made that. I sell that. I think the first part is the committee hoping that Clemson beats SMU. I don't think they want to have to deal with that drama. I don't think they want to have to decide, do we keep SMU or not? I think the committee is hoping for the easiest weekend they've had all year. They want Oregon to win, they want Texas to win, they want SMU to win, they want Boise to win, and they don't care who plays in the Big 12.
Yep.
That's absolutely what they want to happen.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I don't even think they necessarily care too much about Boise State winning. I think they would want Boise State to win just to get the potential Heisman Trophy candidate into the playoff.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I mean, if Boise loses, it's easy. Boise's going to fall behind Alabama. They're going to be out, and UNLV gets the 12 seed, and the winner of the Big 12 game gets the 4 seed. That's simple. I think the worst case scenario for them is for them to have to decide between another ACC team with 2 losses compared to Bama with 3.
Yeah.
Especially when the second loss for SMU is in the conference title game. And setting that precedent. So I don't think they want. I think they want SMU to beat Clemson and beat them bad. But at the end of the day, just SMU, please win that game. That's what the committee wants. Plus, I don't think they want 2 3-loss teams. Like if Clemson wins and gets in, and Texas wins, you're gonna have 3 3-loss teams in the playoffs. I don't think they want that because you'd have Georgia, you'd have Clemson, and you'd have Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't think they want that.
No. God, that'd be crazy. Going from never having a 2-loss team in the 14 playoff to having 3 3-loss teams in the 12.
Yeah. Including a team that gets a bye.
Yeah.
Well, no, they probably wouldn't get a bye. Clemson probably wouldn't get a bye. But if UNLV beats
No.
Boise, Clemson gets a bye.
Yeah. Gosh, the fact. Not even going to get started.
Could you imagine Notre Dame's path if they have to play UNLV in the first round and Clemson in the second round? Oh, that might actually be bad for Notre Dame because now you're going to go another month before you're tested by a good team.
What I was about to say, like I brought this up on a previous show that throughout the regular season in college football, it was always the battle-tested team would prevail most times.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to reset in the playoffs, which is another reason why, to your point, I don't want Notre Dame to just have this cupcake walk to the semifinals and then go play Texas. Yeah. I'm with you. I am with you. Well, I don't know if we got to the previous one from Do It To It.
Whoops.
Buy, sell, hold from Do It To It. Notre Dame will make a run to minimum to at least the Final Four. And with the on-the-field success, we'll start to get the benefit of the doubt from recruiting services in the 2026 class, more accurately ranking Notre Dame's recruits.
So, I think the only way that happens is if Notre Dame wins it all. And I still don't know if that'll happen. Because here's the reality. Pissing Notre Dame fans off still sells more than – because if you hype up Notre Dame players, then you've pissed off all the other fan bases. Where if you diminish Notre Dame's recruits, you only piss off one fan base. And then that fan base will click on every article you write about their team because they're pissed off about it. Like I keep telling Notre Dame fans, guys, if you don't like these people, don't read it. Don't click on it. They want you to be pissed off and click on it. They want you to watch their stupid show where they hate on Notre Dame because they make money doing so. So I'm going to sell that. They're going to have to win it all to get that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I agree. Buy, sell, hold from Jay Saxton, 1980. Notre Dame running attack will carry the momentum they had the last 2 months into round 1 and 2. Jeremiah Love. Okay, we'll do buy, sell, hold for each one. Jeremiah Love will get.
Can I real quick just buy the first part because I'm going to sell a bunch of these other ones that I do think they'll carry the momentum into the first round, 2 rounds.
Yeah,
I just don't know what's going to look like that.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeremiah Love, 8.6 yards per carry.
For the first 2 rounds, sell.
Jadarian Price, 8.7 yards per carry.
For the first 2 rounds, sell. And there's a better chance of Jadarian getting that than Jeremiah, because if Jeremiah is healthy, like I've been told that he is, he's going to have more carries. And as I've always said, the fewer carries you have, that 40-yard run does better for your yards per carry average.
Sure.
Than if you have 15 carries. But I'm selling on both of those.
And then Riley Leonard, 4.7 yards per carry.
Also sell, because I think he'll be, if the running game is rolling, he'll be over 5.
Yep.
So, yeah. Because he finished the year, what was he to finish the year, Trev? He was at 5.8?
He was to finish the year. Give me just
a second. 5.81. Yeah.
Yep.
And so I would say, I mean, now last 3 games he's been sub, 4.2, but they haven't used him as much. I think you'll probably see them ramp him up a little bit in the first round.
Yeah.
The first couple rounds. Yeah, especially with like 10 days between each game.
Yeah.
That's the point you were making. Or did you make that point yesterday in a show? I've been on so many different shows, so many different people. That certain things will, you're going to be more willing to do certain things because you have 10 days between each game. I thought that was you. Might have been Vince. It was about something. I can't remember what it was.
I'm not sure.
But you're like, I've made so many great points, Brian. I can't remember all of them. All right.
Listen, Brian, I only write down the great points that you make. I don't, for me.
I thought you said that the other day, not me.
I've talked a lot about what Notre Dame's like potential game plan is going to do in the playoffs. So it might have been, but I don't want to take full credit for something if I don't know for sure if I did.
Fair.
And then for Jay Saxton, bonus level actually average over 8.6 yards per carry.
Sell.
Buy, sell, hold from Katie Keevers. The parity in college football this year is related to the elimination of sign stealing.
Well, for Michigan, that's true. For Michigan being a team that's got some parity, that's partially true. No, I look, they're still sign stealing. I mean, guys, I'm watching Notre Dame. They have 3 coaches on the sideline with jerseys. Teams are still signaling stuff in, guys. They still are. Because you're getting the play call to the quarterback and he's talking to the offensive line.
Yeah.
But these up-tempo teams that still have their receivers in the perimeter, their quarterback's not yelling out the play because he's way over there. He's not going to hear it. That's why you still have signalers.
Right.
Notre Dame still has signalers on offense. They still have signalers on defense. You can still steal those signs. It's only really the quarterback that's getting that to his head, but they're still sending out the formations. They're still sending out other things that you can steal. So I'm going to sell that a little bit.
Yeah.
For Michigan, it's hurt.
Yeah, except for when they played Ohio State. But anyways, if offered the Chicago – sorry.
Imagine what the score would have been if they still had Connor Stallion stealing all their signals. Woo.
Well, with that quarterback play, it might have been 16-10 instead of 13-10, but who knows?
That's right.
Buy, sell, hold from JBMH. If offered the Chicago Bears head coaching job, Marcus Freeman will take it.
Sell, because I don't think Marcus Freeman's a moron. I look – there are certain advantages to being in the NFL over college, but there's a lot that aren't. You're a 38, 39-year-old father of 6. The jobs, you are the hot name now, have 2 bad seasons and you're gone. You're gone. And I don't know that NFL, like, what was the head coach of what was Matt, was it Eberflus?
Yeah, Matt Eberflus.
What was his salary? He was making $4.5 million. He makes less than Marcus Freeman makes now. I'm one of the highest paid NFL coaches. Andy Reid is the highest paid NFL coach, and he is making, what is Andy Reid? He's making 20. Sean Payton's making 18. Mike Tomlin's 16. You're not making that kind of money. Sean McVay, that's after winning Super Bowls.
Yeah.
$9, $10, $11 million. Some of these coaches, that's about what you're going to be making at Notre Dame next year. Jim Harbaugh got 16 because he's coached in the NFL before, has already taken an NFL team to the Super Bowl and just won a national championship. So, no, I don't think he's going to take an NFL job. Now, what some of you have to understand are some of those things that are getting out maybe placements by his agent to let the Notre Dame know that he is being coveted so that you need to step up to the plate? Possibly. Is some of that stuff literally writers making crap up to sell articles? Yes. Like somebody put one on our board the other day, and the title was like something like Marcus Freeman, a candidate for the Notre Dame job, and it was literally an article. The title made it seem like, and it was nothing more than the author saying he should be a candidate. There was nothing that said sources. There was none of that stuff. And go ahead, Trev.
I read an article the other day, and it was Marcus Freeman linked to the Chicago Bears head coaching position or whatever, or Marcus Freeman linked to the Bears organization. And it was an article that in the first paragraph, they talked about how Marcus Freeman was drafted by the Chicago Bears. And then the second paragraph was listing 37 other potential candidates that the Bears should reach out to.
Right.
Yeah. Clickbait. Yeah.
Yep.
Buy, sell, hold from God, Country, Notre Dame, and Barbecue. Theoretically, 12 teams in the playoff have a chance to win it all. However, realistically, that number is close to 5 or 6.
Buy.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we talked about earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do we say? Oregon? I said Oregon, Texas, SMU, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Georgia is, and then I don't think Bama can win it all. I don't. I just don't see. I don't think they're that good. That would be it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm buying this specifically. Like, yes, theoretically, any 12 team could, but if you're going to tell me that Arizona State or Iowa State are going to win the national championship, I don't really know if I would believe you. But if you told me that Texas won it, I wouldn't be as surprised as I would have if it was one of the teams coming out of the Big 12. So,
yep.
Buy, sell, hold from Irish Cubby. With the young talent on the roster on defense, along with what should be a top-notch O-line and backfield, Notre Dame could still be a playoff team next year, even with a young, inexperienced quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame should still be a playoff team next year, even with the schedule they have. They should still be a playoff team.
See, what's even crazier about this is they will have a young, inexperienced quarterback from an on-field standpoint, but this will be the most experienced within the program as a starter that they've had since 2022,
Right.
which is really weird to think about.
And even if you go back to 2021, there's only been one guy that's been in the system more than a year.
Oh,
Jack
yeah.
Cohn was a transfer. Sam Hartman in 2023 was a transfer. Jack was in 21. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame has had like Ian Book was the only back-to-back starter Notre Dame has had in 19 and 20, and that was the last one for a while. Like,
Yeah,
because
'cause you
Cohen
had
was a one-year guy,
yeah.
and then you had Pine and Buckner starting 22, Hartman
Yeah.
last year, and Riley this year.
Even Kaiser, who technically started 2 years, didn't start 2015 as a starter.
Mm-mm.
He only got him because of injury. And then you had Evan 14, Reese in 13, Evan 12, Reese in 11, Dane Christen 10. I mean,
Mhm.
so since Jimmy Clausen started from 07 to 09, Notre Dame has had one quarterback that began the 2 seasons as the starter and stayed the starter. Because you actually,
Yeah.
Dane Christ actually started in 10 and 11.
Yeah.
They got benched by halftime of the first game.
Yeah, I
So
remember
you've only
that.
had one quarterback that started the season. And also Brandon Wimbush started 17 and then started 18, but then he got benched.
Yeah.
Ian Book in 19 and 20 is the only quarterback since Jimmy Clausen to start the season and finish the season as the starter for 2 years in a row. Right? Because it was
No,
Dane
you're
was
right.
10, but
Yeah.
Dane didn't finish either season because of
Nope.
injuries.
Yeah.
Ev was 12, and then he got suspended, so Reese took over in 13. And then 14 was Everett again.
Mm-hmm.
So he technically started twice, but not 2 years in a row.
Correct.
15 was Malik, who then got hurt, and Deshaun took over. And then the next year, Deshaun was a starter. So Deshaun wasn't a 2-year starter to start and finish.
Right.
17 was Brandon, who also started in 18, but then he got benched for Ian. And then Ian started in 19 and 20.
Mm-hmm.
And then 21 was Jack, 22 was Tyler, 23 was Hartman, 24 was Riley Leonard.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Yep. Oh, I know. I know it.
Somebody just said that's depressing. Amen.
I was about to say, I think I just
Yeah.
took a year off my life listening to that entire list.
Oh,
Buy sell hold from DJ. If Clemson beats SMU, we will witness Ward Emanuel's most entertaining song and dance yet.
listening to him justify why they dropped SMU out is going to be interesting.
Yep.
And then the next press conference I'm going to watch after Ward's done is Jim Phillips.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also don't know if there's enough money on this earth that would make me want to watch Ward Emanuel dance.
Oh, that is so true.
Buys the hold from Domer Grizz. If the rankings were based solely on the last 10 games of the regular season, Notre Dame would be ranked number 1 and Oregon would be ranked number 2.
Sell. Oregon would still be ranked number 1.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the last 10 games in that stretch, Oregon beat Ohio State in that stretch.
Correct.
They beat number 21 Illinois in that stretch. They have the one ugly win over Wisconsin, but you could argue that Notre Dame, has a couple close games. They have nothing like a win over Ohio State.
Right.
No, Oregon would still be number 1 and should still be number 1. Do I think Notre Dame is better? Sure. Arguably but it's not a given.
Sure.
But their resume is better. It just
Yeah.
is. And they've had a couple close games, but they've also had a lot of butt kickings they've handed out.
Yeah.
I mean, they beat Oregon State by 35, UCLA by 21, Michigan State by 21, Purdue by 35, ranked Illinois by 29, Michigan by 21, Maryland by 21, Washington by 28. The Wisconsin game was the anomaly. And then the only other close game was against a really good Ohio State team.
Yeah.
So, no. Oregon would still be number 1. And I
Agreed.
wouldn't argue with it. I wouldn't argue with it.
No, I agree with that.
Like, let's say the first 2 games were like preseasons, didn't count, right? Oregon should still be number 1. Now, do I think Notre Dame would be number 2? Yeah, I think they're number 2.
Yep. Yeah.
Did I get the? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Buy so hold from Wade Garrett. Clemson wins or UNLV wins and knocks Bama out of the playoffs.
Sell both. Definitely selling that if UNLV wins, that knocks them out because they will have no problem flipping Bama and Boise State. None. They won't even have to feel the need to justify that one because
No.
ESPN won't ask them about that one, most likely. They will have to justify not having SMU in, but I think they will justify it. I don't think they're going to knock Bama out. I hope that I'm proven wrong, and I think they should knock Alabama out. I don't think Alabama should be in anyway. But if Clemson wins, I just think that they'll drop SMU behind. I don't think they should. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying it's what I would do. I'm saying that I think that's what they will do.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it is if they were going to drop Alabama out, they would have done it last week. Honestly, they wouldn't have moved them in front of Miami.
Agree.
But
let me just say one thing about that. They could easily justify that by knocking Penn State down 4 spots and knocking Georgia down 3 or 4 spots because they lost.
Yeah.
And say, well, we dropped SMU down the same number of spots as we dropped those other teams that lost, but those other teams would still be in. That's the difference.
Yeah, agreed.
I could see them doing something like that. Don't even say it. Just go.
Yep. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame 5 seed?
I'm going to buy that because I actually think that Penn State's going to get beat by 7 to 10 points at least, and I think that moves Notre Dame up to 5. What say you?
Yeah, I'll buy it. For me, it is a little bit more of a hope buy just because it's not what I think, me personally, what I think should happen. It's just the committee I don't trust them to move Notre Dame above Penn State in any capacity. And I hope I'm proven wrong.
The thing that I will say is I think they will be forced to. If they're going to drop SMU, they're going to have to drop Penn State and Georgia at least 1 spot.
That's true.
They're not going to be able to justify not dropping them at all.
Sure.
And also still drop SMU.
Sure.
Especially since Penn State would then have a worse record than Notre Dame, where Boise or SMU would still have a better record than Alabama.
True. Fair enough. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame first round opponent is Arizona State.
I picked Arizona State to beat Iowa State today in our show, so I'm going to buy that. I do think there's a chance it could be Clemson. I think it'll be Arizona State or Clemson.
Yeah.
Outside shot that it's UNLV, but I picked Boise to win that game.
Yeah. Buy, sell, hold. Clemson upsets SMU.
So, I mean, I know you already said earlier, Trev, that you'd buy that. I'm selling it. I think SMU beats them. Now, they could choke under the pressure of the big game, but I mean, the fact that they went and played Cal and destroyed them with the ACC title on the line. I mean, they were not playing great for a couple weeks, and then they just smoked Pitt, smoked Virginia, smoked Cal to get in the. I think this team is very confident. So unless they pucker up like Notre Dame did against Miami in 2017, then I think they're going to beat Clemson. I think Clemson's reeling a bit.
Yeah. I mean, fair. Buy, sell, hold. If Clemson upsets SMU still gets in.
Sell, and that's selling I'm based on what I think they'll do. In my opinion, if you ask me, barring SMU losing by 40, they're in. If it's up to me.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I just don't think the committee is going to do that. I think the committee's going to drop them out no matter what.
Yeah, which is really frustrating because they've said all year long that, what happens at the conference championship isn't going to affect you and yada, yada, yada.
Unless you're not the ACC, SEC, or Big Ten.
Yeah, correct.
You didn't read the fine print, Trev.
I know. That's all me. Put my glasses on next time. I forgot about those. Buy, sell, hold. Georgia beats Texas a second time.
Sell.
Yeah. Yep. I sell that too. At first I read it's getting late. At first when I read it, I was like, Georgia beats Utah. I was like, all right.
Yeah, buy, duh.
I was like, big buy. I was like, all right.
The weirdest random buys the hold ever I've seen. Yes. Yeah.
Oh man. Buys a hold. Alabama gets left out of the college football playoff.
Sell.
Yep. Buy, sell, hold. First round home teams: Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State.
Sell. I think Texas beats Georgia.
Yeah.
And I think but the interesting thing is going to be, do they leave Georgia ahead of Tennessee or not?
Yeah.
I think they will. So I think the home teams are going to be Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, and Georgia.
Yep. That's what
what I think it'll be.
And then buy, sell, hold. New team wins all 4 Power 4, or yeah, oh my goodness. New teams win all Power 4 championship games: Oregon, Texas, SMU, Arizona State.
I think we talked about that earlier, right? And we both buy that. Yeah.
Yep. Buy, sell, hold from 3rd and 7 duo.
I love this name, by the way. Such a great name.
Beating Alabama in a home playoff game and losing in the second round would be better for the program than beating the first Arizona State in the first round and Boise State in the second round.
So I think I would sell that, because I think the win over Alabama would immediately be diminished by losing to one of those types of teams. You know what I mean, Trev? Like, beating Bama would be better for your program than beating ASU and Boise State, but you can't leave it there, because if you're going to lose the second round, you're probably getting beat by either SMU or Boise State.
Yeah.
And then now the win over Alabama is kind of diminished.
Sure.
So I think still getting to the semifinals would be better for you than getting beat in the second round. Like, I understand. Like, I actually think this is a really good buy, sell, hold submission, because it's not an easy answer, because you would have that win over Bama. But does that win over Bama that last for like 9 days, and then you get beat by Boise? Or in this instance, SMU? You know, like, let's say Notre Dame's the 6th seed and Bama's the 11, and you're going to play SMU. Or you're the 6th seed and you play number 3 Boise because SMU got beat. So lose. I think your win over Bama. Bama, because this is what the storyline is going to be. That's a 4-loss Bama team. You couldn't even beat Boise State or SMU. Bama sucked. They got blown out by Oklahoma. You didn't even beat them as much as Oklahoma beat them. They lost to Vanderbilt. Who freaking cares about beating Alabama?
Oh, yeah.
If you lost to one of those teams. That's exactly how the storyline would go.
Yeah.
So I'd still want to get the semifinals in this case.
Oh, I agree. Look, I don't know if there's a team that Notre Dame could beat in the first round that would make me be okay with them losing in the second, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm always going to be for, like I said earlier, I'm always going to be for them advancing in the playoffs.
Sure.
I am. I mean, I would rather say, hey, Notre Dame got to the semifinal game, other than we got to the quarterfinals and they beat a team that we were fighting tooth and nail and screaming at the top of our lungs that we didn't think deserved to be in the first place. Right. Albeit it is Alabama, but as specific to this year as it pertains to, I would rather just make it to the semifinal.
Right. I would. If I had to pick a scenario where I'd be okay with that, I'd say I would want to beat Georgia in the first round, or beat Texas in the first round, and then lose to that team, the other team, in the second round.
Sure.
If I had to pick that scenario,
yeah,
it would be that, or beat Ohio State in the first round and lose to Texas in the second round.
Right. Yeah.
Something like that.
Sure.
I don't think those are options because of where the teams are going to be seated. So if you're dealing with reality, I just don't see a scenario where that's going to make a lot, where that's just going to be good for Notre Dame. It's a good submission.
Yeah, a good submission.
You have to think about it. I don't think it's an easy, no-brainer answer, because you're like, boy, but I got to turn down a win over Bama. Whew. Like, it's a good one.
Buy, sell, hold from Stinger. Notre Dame would be 11-1 right now with Jack Cohn or Sam Hartman.
Not Sam Hartman, because no, I don't think so. Because of how bad the pass pro was early in the season. I don't know that they would have beat Texas A&M, and I don't know that they would have beaten. Like, they might have beat they would have beat Northern Illinois with those two guys at quarterback. So they'd either be 12-0 or 10-2. I think they would have struggled with a team like Texas A&M with those two guys at quarterback. Think about the first scoring drive of the game. They get a really easy pressure on Riley. He makes the dudes miss, takes off running, scrambles for 15 yards. Then they get a personal foul on him, and that's what got him into field goal range. there's a lot of things that happened in that game that you're like, nah, a less mobile quarterback's not getting that ball off. You know what I mean? And because of the way the offense, like we saw what happened with Jack Cohn, and I'm a big Jack. I've said if Jack Cohn was on the 2022 team, they don't lose. They don't lose. And I would have taken Jack Cohn over Sam Hartman. I like him as a player better. But you got to have Jack Cohn behind a specific type of offensive line, and we saw that in 2021 when he was behind an offensive line that struggled to protect quarterback, and he struggled.
Yeah.
When the offensive line got better, Jack was filthy. You know what I mean? So this line with the offensive – now, if you told me that they had Jack Cohn and the line that we thought we were going to have with Jagasaw, Craig, and Shrouth healthy all year, I'd consider taking Jack Cohn with the running back because you wouldn't need Riley's running. You'd have Love and Price and those guys. I'd consider that. I think they'd be really good with Jack Cohn. But with the way that if everything else is the same, I don't think that they're 11-1 with those two guys at quarterback. And we saw it with Louisville last year, guys. I mean, how many times did Riley Leonard do things to kind of beat that pressure in the pass rush that hurt them last year against Louisville?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm on board with that. Sam Hartman definitely not. Jack Cohn, and I'm with you. I also really like Jack Cohn, and I think I appreciated him more than what others might not have.
Yeah, including the Notre Dame coaches.
Oh yeah, but I mean, in 2021, one of the things that plagued him was the bad offensive line, and then to boot his immobility, right? At least in comparison to Riley Leonard. So yeah, I'm going to sell it too because I think for that. You brought up they would either be 12-0 or 10-2. Neither of those result in 11-1. So I'm with you there with Jack Cohn. So, yep, sell it.
Somebody just said something in the chat. What's the team's record with Book and Claypool on the roster? I just want to remind you that Book and Claypool were both on the 2016 team.
Lisa Hold from Beefeater ND 08. If Army wins out, they will be a 12-1 conference champ. However, it looks like they would not be considered for a playoff spot while a 3-loss Alabama and or a possible 3-loss Georgia waltzes in with their sense of SEC entitlement. Biso Hold on the playoff committee growing a pair and telling the SEC they only get 2 teams, Tennessee and Texas, in the 12-team playoff.
That's the easiest sell I've ever had in my life. The playoff committee will never tell the SEC news they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Not within reason. Because the SEC would be like, well, we should have had all 4 teams in the college football playoff last year.
I mean, yeah.
But in that regard, no, I'm selling that. The committee's not going to grow a pair, and they're not going to tell the SEC they're only getting 2 teams in. And I also think that, barring Georgia getting beat by 40, they're going to have Georgia in as well.
Agreed.
We're not even talking about, yeah. So 3-loss Georgia's getting in unless it's just a slaughter.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So Brady Jackson said, guys, does anybody know if Jeremiah Love is good? And I responded, I said, is that a joke? And he says, I mean, is he healthy? I was like, okay, that one word can change the entire tenor of a post because there's a big difference between the two. But Brady, we did have a okay. I'm glad you corrected that because I'm like, hold on a second.
I'm glad you cleared that up because I saw that comment and I closed out the chat.
Like, are you gonna?
I'm not even kidding. I saw. Does anybody know if J Love is good? And I closed out the chat. I was like, I'm not even touching this.
All good, Brady. I have an update on that on the site. I'll just say what I have been told is that he should be good to go for the playoff. I don't know. Notre Dame hasn't talked about it. They haven't given us information on that. All I know is what I've been told by my sources, which is that he should be good to go for the playoff game. But until Notre Dame really talks about it, we won't really know for sure. And there's been so many rumors about injuries this year that turned out to just be that rumors. Benjamin Morrison wasn't going to play against A&M. Howard Cross wasn't going to play against A&M. Riley Leonard was going to be out for a long time after the Northern Illinois game because of shoulder injury. Jeremiah Love was going to play against Georgia Tech. There's been these rumors all year, and the reality is Notre Dame's like super, super secretive this year with injuries for some reason. And that's led to a lot of people searching to get some news. And because the people close to, like, I know for a fact that coaches and people really close are not going to tell people about injuries because I've tried to get that information. It's the person who heard it from someone, and then that's usually less reliable. So, which I understand, but that's kind of where I'm at. But that is actually the last Bisa Hold submission, Trevor. So we are done.
We did it.
Yeah,
we did it. Really good submissions today, guys.
Yes, great
really
stuff.
Good.
And great chat. Like there was a lot of there's a couple times I wanted to like jump into the conversation in the chat because there were some really good conversations going on as well. You guys did. Really appreciate y'all tonight being with us. Really good stuff. Really good stuff.
Yeah. No, that was awesome. That was a lot of fun. Well, hey, that's going to do us in for tonight for IB After Dark. To clear up a couple things, yes, J-Love is good. But in other news, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family and anybody else you know loves Notre Dame football as much as you do. And of course, go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. That's where we have all of the exclusive content, so you guys are always in the now. But until tomorrow, where we will be back for our Friday mailbag, right, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We will see you guys tomorrow for the Friday mailbag. But until then, for Brian.
10 a.m. Saturday also.
Oh, that's right.
IB countdown to kickoff, baby.
That's right. It'll be a good one, too. We'll be able to dive into all of the matchups because we have less games that we have to cover.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. So join us on Friday for the mailbag. Join us Saturday at 10 a.m. Oh, it was coming. Don't you worry. It was coming. But if we don't see you until then, everybody have a good afternoon, a good evening, and a good night. So for Brian, I'm Trevor. We'll see you tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown podcast.